For all those who appreciate the work that we're doing here on Standing for Truth, please hit that subscribe button because we are just getting started.
Good afternoon. Happy Saturday. Happy post-Halloween. Happy November. Happy anything you want it to be. My name is Christopher Mowdy, and I'm going to be moderating a debate today. The debate is going to be between Tony Reed and NephilimFree. For those of you unfamiliar with these two characters, let me tell you a little something about Tony. Tony is a science communicator whose education, he admits, is mostly that of an autodidact, even though he did go to college. For the past 5 years, he's hosted a show on YouTube called How Creationism Taught Me Real Science. In each episode of the show, he addresses individual creationist arguments by researching the primary resources behind the science they purportedly refute. He's also concluding the final season for the show, and we'll begin addressing other pseudoscience, I guess, in other seasons. And NephilimFree, has been on YouTube for at least a decade, and he has been putting forth arguments for young Earth creationism. He's an apologist for such arguments, and he debates people frequently. He's very methodical, and let's see if the two of them are going to come to some agreement, or who is going to have the most rhetorical flair in presenting the merit of their arguments this afternoon. We talked a little bit before we started recording to ensure that, we approach this with a level-headed, fair-minded fun. That's what this is. This is an exercise in rhetoric and, getting some ideas across. So the format of today is going to be 10 minutes each of an opening statement, 40 minutes where the two of them get to interactively discuss. After that 40-minute period, they will each have 5 minutes for their closing statements. After that, there will be 20 minutes of a Q&A. Now, the Q of the Q&A are going to come from you. They're going to come from me. So as this debate is going on, I can see the chat. So if you have questions as we're going through things, please feel free to post them. I'm going to be copy pastaing them into a document for me to source during the Q&A section. So please do be an active member of the audience. With that being said, neither Tony nor Neff have a preference as to who goes first. It was told that I should just flip a coin. Instead of flipping a coin, I'm just going to give the floor to the new guy. And by new guy, I mean the guy that's new to me. So, Tony, you have 10 minutes for your opening statement.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thanks. Well, first of all, thank you, NephilimFree. Thank you, Christopher Mowdy. Thank you, I Am That I Am. Today's debate topic is, pardon me, I'm getting my notes up here. It's whether evolution or creationism have scientific application. So for the purpose of this debate, we'll work under the assumption that evolution is 100% wrong, creationism is 100% correct, and I'm not saying whether either assertion is true. In fact, I'm not even going to try to get anyone to stop believing in creationism. What I am going to do is demonstrate that even if creationism were 100% correct, it is still scientifically useless. And even if evolution is 100% wrong, it still has scientific applications that you take advantage of every day. Much to the chagrin of people on both sides of this debate, I'm going to be treating both views, yes, even creationism, as theories. Now, when we discuss scientific application of a theory, we're not claiming that, we're not claiming that any theory is ever proven. We're also not discussing individual phenomena that are consistent with the theory. What we're talking about is a confirmation of scientific predictions that are made by the theory. And this is how new discoveries and real-world applications are made. It starts by formulating a hypothesis. Now, very simply, it goes like this. If theory A is true, then we should expect to see phenomenon B when we conduct experiment or observation C. The next obvious step is to conduct experiment or observation C and then determine whether you see phenomenon B as theory A predicted. Now, based on whether you do see phenomenon B, your theory is either supported or it is rejected or revised. Now, based on NephilimFree's past presentation, I'm going to make a prediction. I predict that he will not present any scientific application for creationism whatsoever. Not one thing that was ever discovered by testing any hypothesis derived from the assumption of a creation event. He may present evidence that is consistent with the assumption of a creation event, but he'll never show any creation scientist ever using the assumption of a creation event to make any discovery or any real world application. What he'll probably do is present a discovery and then retroactively claim it was predicted by creationism all along. Neff may attempt to present holes in the theory of common descent, but he'll conveniently fail to mention how often this assumption has been used to predict the evidence. For example, after the lobe-finned fish Eusthenopteron was found in 385 million year strata in 1881, and then Ichthyostega was discovered in 365 million year strata in 1932.
One
you
quick
go.
thing,
There it is.
Tony. Can you
Go
share
ahead.
this full screen? Because we're only seeing it on your camera. If you can share that full screen, and everyone can see that.
I don't know how to. What do I do that? What do I
It
do?
looks like it's filling the screen to me in the Zoom window that I have open.
Yeah, but it's still not full screen. What you have to do is go down to share. It's like a green briefcase, and it says share there. And if you can click that, and then it gives
Can you hit share?
Yes. There we go. Now we're good.
My apologies for not knowing.
Oh no, yeah, it's kind of complex to get through all that.
Give Tony another 60 seconds.
Yeah, let's get this restarted over.
Well, I appreciate that. So, Eusthenopteron found in 385 million year strata in 1881. Then Ichthyostega was discovered in 365 million year strata in 1932. 3 scientists were able to predict ahead of time that they should expect to find the fossil of a creature which appeared to have wrist bones similar to tetrapods and yet rays similar to ray-finned fishes, with spiracles in the head which would be indicative of a lung system in addition to a pectoral girdle separating the head from the body with a neck. They predicted that this morphological combination of tetrapod and fish-like traits would be found in Devonian strata between Ichthyostega and Eusthenopteron on Ellesmere Island, Nunavut in northern Canada. After 5 years of excavation, they found no less than 3 individuals matching those exact traits. These individuals were named Tiktaalik, pretty well known. Now, these predictions keep coming. In fact, just last week, another species of early tetrapod called Parmastega was found stratigraphically between Tiktaalik and Eusthenopteron. Whenever you see timelines of tetrapod to mammal evolution, whale evolution, horse evolution, or even human evolution, the assumption of common descent has told scientists exactly where to look stratigraphically as well as geographically for thousands of these individual fossil species showing transitional traits. Common descent has repeatedly made and continues to make these kinds of predictions, but NephilimFree will never present an instance when an assumption of a worldwide flood or a 6-day creation event was ever used to find any newly discovered fossil species. While NephilimFree might attempt to present weaknesses in the concept of uniformitarianism, which requires an old Earth, he will conveniently fail to mention the fact that uniformitarianism is used every day by geologists to predict where to find minerals like oil, coal, gas, etc. So if you drive a car, you're benefiting from the scientific application of assuming an old Earth. NephilimFree will be unable to cite any example of a geologist ever discovering any of these minerals by assuming a worldwide flood. Now, while NephilimFree might attempt to present weaknesses in the Big Bang Theory, he'll conveniently fail to mention the fact that the cosmic microwave background radiation was predicted decades ahead of time by Big Bang theory, which was first formulated in 1922 by Alexander Freeman and then rediscovered in 1927 by Georges Lemaitre, who was incidentally a creationist and felt that the model indicated a creation event. Now, whether or not there ever was a creation event, the model states that at some point in the finite past, all of the matter and energy in the universe was condensed into a small volume. Pardon me here. Now, using this model in 1946, George Gamow published a paper and theorized that just after the Big Bang, microwaves would be released at a temperature of 50 Kelvin. This estimate was revised several times over the following years as quantum mechanics was developed, and I may end up discussing that later. But in 1964, Robert H. Dick, Jim Peebles, and David Wilkinson at Princeton University predicted that the cosmic background radiation would have been released along with matter at the Big Bang, and due to billions of years of redshift, would be at a temperature of under 5 Kelvin. It just so happened that at the same time, Arno Penzias and Robert Wilson were working at nearby Bell Labs, experimenting on bouncing radio waves off of echo balloon satellites. And after canceling out any potential radio sources, they continued hearing a low, steady, mysterious noise that persisted in their receiver in every direction. They discovered microwave background radiation at a temperature of 2.7 Kelvin. This confirmed the hypothesis of Dick, Peebles, and Wilkinson and resulted in a Nobel Prize for Physics. Now, the list of predictions goes on and on. I'll be happy to discuss more, but my point, like I said before, is that even if evolution were 100% wrong and creationism were 100% correct, creationism still has exactly zero practical applications, while evolutionism, if I may use the term, has endless scientific applications that we are privileged to use and be able to take advantage of every single day. So here's another prediction. What NephilimFree will almost certainly present is that individual phenomena that he feels are inconsistent with the theory of evolution, abiogenesis, uniformitarianism, or the Big Bang cosmology. He may also attempt to refute certain claims which none of these theories make. If he's savvy, he may even present real evidence that is consistent with the creation model that no creationist ever predicted until after it was discovered. And I'll point this out every time because in the end, he's doing this instead of presenting scientific applications for creationism, which is the agreed upon subject for this debate. So this debate is a scientific test of my theory that creationism has no scientific applications. So in this test, theory A is that creationism has no scientific applications. Phenomenon B is that Neff will attempt to present weaknesses in evolution instead of presenting any scientific applications for creationism. Observation or experiment C is this debate. So to state my hypothesis, if creationism has no scientific applications, then NephilimFree will attempt to present weaknesses in evolution instead of presenting any scientific applications of creationism over the course of this debate. And that's what I have to say. So let's see what you have to say, Net.
Okay, so that was Tony's 10-minute introduction with 30 seconds left. Well done, well done. Much appreciated. And so if you don't mind, I'm going to try to kind of paraphrase what you just said to kind of make sure that I have my head wrapped around it. And in doing so, hopefully the audience will have their head wrapped around it as well. And I'll do it while my wife is texting me sizes for shoes that she's looking at for me while she's out shopping. Tony, you did a very clever rhetorical trick where in presenting the case that evolution is applicable to science because it confirms scientific predictions, you're using this debate itself as kind of a scientific experiment where you've put forth predictions that you expect to come true through the observations of the debate itself. Is that fair?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm trying to paint it neutral. I hope I'm not coloring it incorrectly. And the point that you're making is that evolution has endless scientific applications, whereas creationism has no scientific applications. That's the bumper sticker.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So now we get to hear from Neph. 10 minutes. Let me get my timer started. And Neph, whenever you're ready, you can begin.
Okay, so first thing I'll say is that if creation is true, then the intelligent design of things, especially biological systems, is expected. That would be a symptom. When somebody creates something, it's always designed. They put design properties into it. So if the world was created, if life was created, then we would expect intelligent design to be true by default, by default. So first, about this matter, Dr. Mark Kirschner, founding chair of Department of Systems Biology at Harvard University, has said this. In fact, over the last 100 years, almost all of biology has proceeded independent of evolution, except evolutionary biology itself. Molecular biology, biochemistry, and physiology have not taken evolution into account at all. In other words, you don't have to know anything about what you believe about the origin of things to do science with it. All you need to know is the properties of it. For example, physicians don't need to have a clue about evolution theory to do medicine, and they don't use it when they treat disease because it just doesn't matter. It doesn't figure in. Professor Philip Skell, an evolutionist, American chemist, emeritus Evan Hugh professor at Pennsylvania State University, one of the most prominent research universities in the world, says, none of the discoveries of biology and medicine in the past century are dependent on guidance from Darwinian evolution. It provided no support. So my statement is that evolution is not scientifically true and can never be applied in science in any way. Evolutionists believe they're applying evolution to science, but they are not. So the kinds of changes the evolutionists propose, antibiotic immunity, somatic mutation, genetic recombination mutation, changes to allele frequency, physiological adaptation, these are not evolutionary changes. These are horizontal change, not vertical change. It doesn't support evolution. You can't apply evolution to science when you're talking about these things. And these are the things that evolutionists talk about, claiming you can apply them in science. See, for example, finches are still finches. The morphological difference between them is not anatomical. There's no evolution there. Neither is there any evolution in getting various breeds of dog from wolves. That's horizontal change, not vertical change. No evolution. You can't apply that to science. So evolutionists claim that they're applying evolution to science when they see dogs vary or when they see various things that they're in their imagination, but it's not applying evolution to science. It's applying their ideas about evolution to science. Vertical change is what you see on the right. That can't be applied to science. Horizontal change can be. The evolutionists' idea of vertical change cannot be and has never been applied to science. For example, these are the things that evolutionists claim that they're applying to science. The discovery of evolutionary paths from one taxa to another by studying genetic similarities, phylogenetics, for example. Well, firstly, genes are created. They can't have arisen by evolutionary processes. Therefore, you're not applying anything evolutionary to science. Gene prediction, increased likelihood of finding a gene in a specific location in the genome of one species because a similar gene with a similar function is found in the genome of another species. But similarities in genetics is not evidence of evolution. I'm going to give more information about that. So you're not applying anything evolution to science when you do this. Immunology, designing drugs to defeat the immune system of viruses and bacteria. Evolutionists claim the ability of a bacteria to gain an immunity to an antibiotic is evolutionary change, and therefore we're doing science when we design antibiotics. That's not true. That's not evolutionary change. It doesn't change the structural design of a bacteria or a virus one iota for it to gain an immunity. Nothing. No number of such changes can ever morph a bacteria into something fundamentally different. It's not evolutionary change. That's horizontal change. You're not applying evolution to science when you talk about immunology. It's not evolution. Algorithms, using the algorithms found in the DNA molecule to design better human computer algorithms for search and comparison of information. This is actually being done. This is applying intelligent design because algorithms arise from intelligence only. Evolution cannot have imparted algorithms to the information in the DNA. It's impossible. Algorithms arise from intelligence only. It's not even possible for an algorithm to arise by chemistry. Therefore, when we find algorithms in DNA and try to apply them to computer science, what we're applying is creation to a science, not evolution. The fact that the universe and biological systems were created makes science possible because the order, complexity, interdependency, and purpose of the things that exist make us possible for us to study and utilize them. An example, treatment of a disease depends upon a properly functioning system that has experienced entropic change. Beliefs about the origin of the system play no part in treatment of disease. However, the properties of biological systems verify that they were created. So we're applying creation to science and medicine, not evolution. So here are some examples of how creation through intelligent design has been applied in science. The design feature are bump-like tubercles on the humpback whales, which reduce stall and improve aquadynamics. The application is that scientists are now using this to create things like improved fans. You see the bumps on the fan, it improves aerodynamics. It's a superior design. Where'd they get that idea? From whales. Here's another. The design feature of the feet of a gecko. It enables the creature to walk straight up and down glass, a perfectly smooth surface. This is being applied to all kinds of dry glues. Where'd they get the idea? From geckos. Geckos were designed. Here's another. Mercedes-Benz took the shape of the particular boxfish and used it to design the front end of an automobile for improved aerodynamics. Where'd they get the idea? From creation. Evolution couldn't do that. Velcro is another beautiful example. Velcro is a feature of cockleburs that allows their seeds to attach to things so they can be transported and promote the species in other environments. And the result was the invention of Velcro. So here's another. I hope I say this right. The high-speed Shinkansen bullet train in Japan. The designers took the inspiration from the beak of a type of bird called kingfishers to design the front end of it, and the result is more stability and better aerodynamics. They used creation to do it. Here's another. The skin of sharks was used as inspiration for NASA to create what's called riblets film, which improves aquadynamics. It was even used on a ship, a boat that won a race, partly because of its increased aquadynamics. The sharks, the wings. Otto Lilienthal is the man who was first successful for numerous unpowered flights. He got his inspiration from the wings of birds. That's implying intelligent design, not evolution. Here's another. The design feature of what's called the lotus effect, the petals of a lotus plant, they cannot be wetted. The water will bead on them all the time. And this is being applied in science to all kinds of materials that create waterproofing, as you can see in the picture below. Here's another. The design of the termites use to create their mounds automatically creates airflow, which creates improved cooling and condensation. This is now being applied in architecture, such as an Eastgate Center in Zimbabwe. The building has automatic cooling and condensation. It creates its own water supply to some degree because of the design of the mounds created by termites using that. Here's another. Bird protection glass. This is glass that birds can see so they don't fly into it and break their necks, designed based on a design feature in life. Here's a recent one. An efficient new depth sensor was inspired by spider eyes. This was a recent article. Biometrics laboratory at MIT. They're using all kinds of features that are designed into living systems to create technologies that improve our lives. And these are just a few of them. Engineers, proteins stick like glue, and they've figured out how to make better adhesives by looking at proteins. Another, here comes the sun. A new sunflower-inspired pattern creates solar energy. And here's another. This website here provides numerous examples. Okay. Now, predictions. Can predictions be made? Absolutely. In 1984, creation scientist Dr. Russell Humphreys, former director of Sandia National Laboratories, predicted the magnetic fields of the various planets in our solar system based on the idea that they were created only 6,000 years ago. When NASA sent out their space probes and measured the Voyager 2 spacecraft, for example, It measured their magnetic fields, and guess what? Dr. Humphrey's prediction of their magnetic fields was spot on, based on a 6,000-year-old creation for the solar system. He predicted every single one of them and was right about every single one of them, based on the idea, the understanding that they're only 6,000 years old, not millions. How's that for prediction? In between 1997 and 2006, a team of scientists, creationist scientists, at two different creationist organizations created a project called Radioisotopes and the Age of the Earth. And they predicted that if the Earth was only thousands of years old, we should find, because helium is a very slippery molecule, super small, and escapes from granite and crystals very rapidly, we should find that the rate and the amount of helium in the crystals of zircon crystals of granites throughout the Earth should show a 6,000-year-old age for those granites. They were exactly
all right.
right.
Neff, the time has come. Do you want to wrap it up? Do you want a couple more seconds just to wrap it up?
Yeah, I'll just say I have other predictions that show that science, that predicting a young Earth creation model has shown that science can be applied, by prediction can be made based on young Earth creation model and hold true.
Okay, so that was Neff with his introductory 10 minutes, where he was arguing for, excuse me, creationist science to be applicable in science, right? Creationism to be a model that could be applied in science. And, excuse me, in the same way that I attempted to kind of paraphrase and summarize Tony's point, I'm going to try to do the same with you, Neff. Your argument against evolution being applied to science is that your argument is that they're not applying evolution to science, they're applying ideas of evolution to science.
That's correct.
And also design features. A lot of your presentation was showing how design features of living systems are being used for technological and engineering innovation. And then you started talking about how a creationist model can make accurate predictions, risky predictions. And for example, Dr. Humphrey's magnetic field prediction. Fair?
Sounds right. Yes, sir.
Okay. So now we open it up. So you gentlemen are going to be interacting with each other, responding to each other's opening statements, asking each other questions, answering each other's questions. I do very much expect this to be a level-headed, charitable, and respectful conversation. I'll be chiming in when I have to, but otherwise, I'm going to set my timer for 40 minutes, and I'm going to let the two of you have an awesome discussion.
Tony, let me ask you a question. If any of the things that I've said, and I had others that I didn't provide, are true, that, for example, that based upon a 6,000-year-old creation, that Dr. Russell Humphreys accurately predicted the magnetic fields of the planets in our solar system, if that's true, wouldn't that invalidate your statement that creation can't be used, can't make accurate predictions in science?
Well, it would seem that way, except that you need to read his actual paper. And what he did is calculate based on the masses of the planets. Now, the thing is, we thought Jupiter was much heavier than it really is. And in the end, he was wrong about Jupiter. He was correct about the masses of the other planets, so he was correct about the magnetic field. It's funny that you should mention that. And that'd be your first question, because that's actually my next episode on my show.
So you think that he got Jupiter wrong, but that's not what I've read. He didn't get any of them wrong from what I've read. But even if
you won't miss it,
even if he were off somewhat on Jupiter and nailed the others, doesn't that still invalidate your claim that if he could accurately predict what the magnetic fields of those planets would be based on their age, then your statement that the creation model can't be applied in science, that would be incorrect, would it not?
Okay, again, you need to read his paper, because he calculated using his own creative math that the magnetic field of the Earth should have had an exponential decay from a creation event 10,000 years ago, and then for the rest of the planets. Sorry, there's an echo in my head, or in my headphones here. But based on the mass of the rest of the planets, that's how he calculated their magnetic fields.
How he did it? how he did it, I really don't see that as an end all. He did it, and it was based on 6,000-year-old creation, and they were accurate. And in fact, you are aware, aren't you, that the magnetic fields that have been discovered of those planets have caused secular scientists to scratch their heads, because they predicted that they would have very greatly different magnetic fields. They were shocked to find out what they actually were. Russell Humphreys was surprised to find out was not surprised, rather, but he was happy to find out that his prediction was correct. So they don't fit the secular model. NASA was scratching their heads about the magnetic fields being what they are, because their prediction failed, but Dr. Humphreys' predictions were accurate. That's what I would point out about that. In the end, it doesn't matter. His predictions were accurate. I'm sorry.
I thought you were finished. Which secular scientists were fooled? Because I have seen no evidence of that, and I've not seen any evidence of his projections being any more accurate than NASA's. Okay. In fact, with Jupiter, he was actually way off.
Okay, so I can provide that for you. I don't have that in front of me. I have that information, but so yeah, I'm just going to reiterate, NASA's predictions about the magnetic fields of the planets has never been right. And I'll try to find that information and show that to you, or share it with you. Some of them have made statements to that effect. So yeah, no, their predictions were all off.
And I hate to be self-promotional here, but next Friday, everybody, you can watch my episode on planetary magnetism. And you will find that I'll present both NASA's predictions, Russell's predictions, his own paper, and you can read it for yourself. Yes. You don't even have to wait for NephilimFree.
That sounds
good. Are there any other arguments of yours that you'd like me to address?
Oh, well, sure, plenty. In the 1980s, physicist John Baumgartner developed a creation theory for the rapid motion of the Earth's crust during the flood and he predicted that cold slabs of crust would be found inside the Earth because they got there rapidly. You understand that if a massive slab of material were subducting at a rate your fingernails grow, which is what the rate that they're moving now, roughly, before that material reached thousands of kilometers down inside the Earth, it would have been heated by the materials around it, because it gets hot deep in the Earth. Secular scientists were surprised to find that the material is cold. Now, that fits the creation model of the material being subducted rapidly into the Earth during the flood, but doesn't jive with the secular idea that the continental plates were subducted at the rate your fingernails grow over millions and millions of years. John Baumgartner's model was accurate. In fact, his software that he developed for predicting a continental plate movement and the materials we find in the Earth is still to this day the most accurate computer model that has ever been written for that product. How do you explain Baumgartner's ability to predict cold slabs of continental crust deep inside the Earth using the flood model if it's not applying science?
Well, first of all, you're misrepresenting what the actual the findings were. They're definitely cold compared to the subcrustal environment they're in. Yes. But no, he didn't predict that they were cold. They're just cold. They're just not as hot,
yes,
which would be expected if they had subducted from above. However, if you want to talk about predictions, you're very vocal about being against subduction. In 1962, American geologist Robert Coates published his observations of subduction in the Aleutian Arc in the journal Geophysics. It was among the first of countless papers that detailed the detection of earthquakes deep within the crust upon the paths of subduction zones, and that culminated in 2013 with Marco Pills, Stefano Parolai, and Dino Bindi publishing results of their experiments using a passive seismic sonar and a technique that kind of resembles an ultrasound, but on a grand scale. And this result was a three-dimensional image of the Issyk-Ata fault in Kyrgyzstan and a visual confirmation of the process of subduction being observed. These theories of plate tectonics and continental drift are continually vindicated. I can go on that forever. I've done an entire episode on that. What I meant when I earlier asked you was, are there any other arguments you made in your opening statements that you'd like me to address.
Yes, well, you misrepresented my statement. I've never been against subduction. I'm not against subduction, and when you misrepresented the statement when I said that he predicted them to be cold, this means in relation to the materials around them. It doesn't mean they're ice cold in any way. That was kind of a straw man. A kind of a straw man.
Okay, so he
did predict them
to
have a dramatically different temperature and an unexpected difference in temperature, and that's exactly what was found. That's why we call it colloquially call it cold.
Okay? Who said that was unpredicted?
Well, the time doesn't predict it. Millions of years of material going down into the earth at the rate your fingernails grow is not plausible to believe that the material is going to remain at a significant difference in temperature. I mean, can you show me a scientific reason to believe that you take something of considerably different temperature and push it at the rate your fingernails grow into something that's 500 or 1,000 or 1,500 degrees warmer, and that it's not going to warm up? See, it doesn't add up. That's the thing, Tony. Doesn't add up.
Nobody's saying it wouldn't warm up. We're saying it would be lower in temperature. And that was predicted. You said he predicted it in 1981. This was predicted in 1962. So congratulations, you just predicted something that had already been predicted. But again, I'm going to go back to the question I just asked you. Are there any other arguments you made in your opening statement that that you'd like me to address specifically?
Well, I doubt seriously that was predicted in 1962. I think you're misrepresenting the science information. But
okay, I've got the paper on it. I'll go ahead and put it in the comments if they'll let me.
Okay, but the design features of living things have been used. You say science can't be applied, creation can't be applied, but the design features of living systems are being applied to create improved technology constantly. So your idea that creation can't be used to applied in science is false. In fact, the very fact that bacteria gain immunity is predicted by intelligent design. Those things are intelligently designed. The somatic mutation mechanism in the immune system of living things is algorithmic. It operates with algorithms. Algorithms come only from intelligence. You cannot apply bacterial immunity. It cannot be said to be evolution being applied to the field of medicine. It's impossible because algorithms cannot be produced by an evolutionary process. They come only from intelligence. So the algorithmic somatic mutation system of the immune systems of every living thing in this world cannot be a product of evolution, but must be a product of intelligent design. And therefore, we're applying a symptom of creation, which is that the creation was intelligently designed in science. It's certainly not anything evolution could do. So it's not evolution applied to science. Can you understand that?
Okay, first of all, when we planned this debate, you promised me I wouldn't bring up anything about microevolution. And what you're talking about is microevolution,
no, I didn't
which
say
you agreed
that.
to.
No, I didn't.
It's not? Is it
No,
not the result of a genetic?
I didn't say any such thing. And nonetheless,
all right, hold on.
We're not
let
debating
you talk for 5 minutes.
We're not debating microevolution.
And you're already interrupting me. I showed you the respect of listening to every word you had to say.
But you're misrepresenting.
Sure as hell show me the same respect.
Well, respect me by not misrepresenting what I say.
You did. Are you saying that's not a result of a change in allele frequency?
I'm not debating microevolution. I'm
that's
pointing
right.
out
that's what you're doing.
No, I'm pointing out that these changes are not evolution, a product of evolution. Therefore, we're not applying. Evolutionists claim that bacterial immunities is an example of evolution being applied in science. Is that not true? Of course it's true. And so I'm pointing out that that is not true.
Which you're not refuting, correct?
I am pointing out that statement of evolutionists is not true, that bacterial immunities, gaining immunities, is an example of evolution being applied in science is not true because bacterial immunities are not evolution. That's what I'm pointing out.
Well, you did admit that they were microevolution, and I'm not disagreeing with it. You're not disagreeing with it. So it's irrelevant to this conversation.
No, no.
Now, this said, I'm going to go ahead and address the rest of what you said, because you were talking about all these designs that we see in nature, and you're calling it designed features in nature, but they were not predicted by creation. They were observed first, then you retroactively apply them to creationism after they've been used to develop something else. There was nobody who said, if creationism is true, we should see Velcro, or we should see cockles and be able to develop Velcro. We should see whale bumps.
I didn't give those as an example of that. Tony, you're misrepresenting.
No, I checked the recording here.
No, I showed those as examples of intelligent designs that are being applied in science. I didn't say they were predicted. You mistake.
Well, then you are confused. Not. Then you're not. You're not even addressing the subject.
I've already applied.
The subject is, how do you apply creationism to science?
I've already addressed
that. Science is about getting. Hey, listen. I'm going to let you talk. You got like 5 minutes to talk. Okay, here's the deal. You did not present any prediction made by creation ahead of time. What you've noticed is, what you pointed out was people seeing something that already existed and then making a discovery on it, and then you're applying it to creationism. That's completely the opposite of science.
No, that's not at all. You're misrepresenting what I said. I provided examples where intelligent design properties have been applied in science. I'm also provided 2 examples where the prediction of creation has been applied in science. Here's another one. In 2000, Dr. David DeWitt, along with several other creationist scientists, predicted that the changes that occurred in the genome of Neanderthals would be very much like the locations and the types of changes that have occurred in modern humans, based on the fact that Neanderthal was fully and modern human, which is what creationists have always been saying, that they were a disease-ridden tribe of mankind produced after the flood of Noah, after the Tower of Babel affair. And that's what creationists have always been saying. Scientific study found out that is exactly correct, that the types and locations of genetic change that have occurred in the DNA of Neanderthal is very much like those that occur in modern humans. Therefore, this is evidence, you see, that Neanderthal was nothing but human. But that's not the story we've been getting from the evolutionists. That there were.
All right, Neff, I'm going to interrupt you just for a moment. I'm going to pause the time. And Tony, before you address that, I think that it's worth noting that from the outside looking in, from the outside looking in, it looks like there's a little bit of confusion, and I think it's worth disentangling a couple of things. In Neff, in your 10-minute introduction, you spent some time showing how design features of living systems are used within technology and engineering innovations. And for you, that is creation being applied in science, because science can encompass technology and engineering. Is that a fair assessment?
I guess.
Okay. The only reason why I bring it up is because I think that you using it for that purpose, I think that it's worth phrasing like that to Tony, because for Tony, for it to be applied to science means something different, right? So I think when it comes to the Q&A part, I'm going to ask you guys to define what you mean by science. But if you want to address that now, I think that it'll help disentangle what Neff's efforts are to show how created design features of living systems are being used in science being technology, science being engineering, and stuff like that. In addition to, he has a separate argument that there are predictions made from creationist stances that are used for scientific purposes, right? I think those are 2 different branches that Neff is bringing up. Okay. So moving forward, if they can be addressed as separately as the separate things that they are, I think it'll help with a more productive conversation.
Sure.
I'm going to start the timer.
Okay. So, Tony, you said that my statement about the magnetic fields is not right, but I pasted into the text chat of this hangout, this discussion, a paper called "Evidence for Crustal Magnetic Signature on Mercury from Messenger Magnetometer Observations," published in, and this was what they discovered was that Mercury had a magnetic field that was much more strong than they had predicted. They predicted it would have an extremely weak one, but it had a far stronger magnetic field. So this is an example of what you said is not true, that NASA was not surprised, not left scratching their heads based on the discovery of the magnetic fields, which Humphreys accurately depicted. Another example is a paper titled Mercury's decay rate is so rapid from some future space probe could detect it fairly soon. In the 1990 planet magnetic field should have been 1.8% smaller than its 1975 value. That was not a science paper, but that's a discovery. So the magnetic fields of these planets for example, Venus's magnetic field was discovered to be very different from what they believed it would be. The same thing is true for several of the body of the moons in our solar system, not just the planets. I can provide several scientific sources, secular scientific sources, that where they predict the magnetic field of the planet should be X, and they come find out it's dramatically different based on what Voyager found out. So I think you're uninformed about this matter. The papers the fact that NASA was left scratching their heads because their predictions were considerably off is true. Maybe you're not aware of it.
Are you looking at a different chat than I am? Because I don't see him anywhere.
I'm sorry. Okay. So I'm giving some water to my wife. She's thirsty. So I don't know what you're talking about. I pasted one source in the and here's an example, and here's another. I'll read it to you. The overall intensity of the field is declining at a rate of 26 nanoteslins per year. If this rate of decline were to continue, the magnetic field would reach zero in 1,200 years. This is from Magnetic Field Decline Science, June 28th, 1980. So it's been a long time they've been predicting these magnetic fields to discover, whoa, we're way the heck off, way off. So Scientific American published this. In the next 2 millennia, if the present rate of decay is sustained, the dipole component of the Earth's magnetic field should be zero. That was published Scientific American, December 1989. But guess what? Well, it's not. See, so their predictions of the magnetic field based on their model for the solar system formation has not worked out. It's been off.
Well, first of all, you haven't posted those links, so I can't really comment on exactly what they say. What I can say is from what I've read on it all is, I mean, I've even done an episode on just Earth's magnetic field, and we know that there are, you know, artifacts we found in villages in Mesopotamia from just 6,000 years ago, where the magnetic field is significantly lower than it is now. So what we know for sure is that the magnetic field has changed several times. Now, Russell Humphreys has admitted that the magnetic field has reversed polarity many times, which I'm going to congratulate you for agreeing with him on that, because there's another person I've debated, Kent Hovind, who claims that that's just a certain measure of weakness. He didn't. It's almost like he never heard of magnetites. But the magnetic moment is recorded in every single material artifact that is solidified, and we have seen over the years that or at least as we go back in history, that the magnetic field has changed, going up and down several times throughout history.
Yeah. It's gone
so
up and
I don't
down.
see where you're going
that
with
doesn't
this.
Contradict anything that creationists believe, however. I'm sorry.
Well, yeah, it does.
No,
since Russell Humphreys' entire model is based on what's the incremental decline, or exponential decline, that's not what we observe.
Russell Humphreys predicted that we would find those fluctuations in the magnetic field. Did you know that? Here's another one.
He definitely predicted it after it was already discovered, certainly.
Okay, he predicted it. So here's another example. Evolutionists have been claiming that the majority of the DNA molecule is junk, garble left over, that's been abandoned by evolution over the last hundreds of thousands of years, and our genome is largely junk, and that they've actually believed that the only thing in the human genome that wasn't junk was almost exclusively protein codes, the information that codes for a protein production. So they relegated the rest of the genome to junk. As far back as the 1970s and 80s, creationist scientists were making the prediction that the vast majority of the DNA molecule would be discovered to be useful and functional information, and that none of it, if any of it, was garble left over by evolution, that we would find it had function. Today we know 87% that, as current knowledge, we might find more. 80% of the DNA molecule is transcribed by polymerase into RNA, the workhorses of the cell. So this prediction of evolution failed, and the creationist was right. Now, please don't please, if what you say about creation can't predict things based on a creation model, can you explain to me why the creationists predicting that the vast majority of DNA would be found to be functional in some way, and they even predicted that it would be information used during fetal development to create the organism? That's holding true as well. Therefore, based on this one example alone, isn't your claim that creation predictions based on creation can't be applied in science, isn't it invalidated?
Okay, well, first of all, let's start with your misrepresentation of creationists, which said that all of the DNA would have function. Now, here's the thing, we don't know that for sure, but second is, in the scientific literature, here's another misrepresentation you've made. Junk DNA has never meant functionless. David Cummings coined the term junk DNA in 1972, and what he said was, this is a quote, "These considerations suggest that up to 20% of the genome is actively used, and the remaining 80+% is junk. But being junk doesn't mean it is entirely useless. Common sense suggests that anything that is completely useless would be discarded. There are several possible functions for junk DNA." End quote. And in fact, several functions were proposed, not just in that paper, but they were observed starting even earlier, such as buffering against mutations. This was before he published that. Fluctuations in intracellular solute concentrations, serving as binding sites for regulatory molecules, facilitating recombination, inhibiting recombination, influencing gene expression, maintaining chromosome structure and behavior, coordinating genome function, and providing multiple copies of genes to be recruited when needed. So it never once meant it was useless. It's more like a junkyard. You ever go to a junkyard? There's not most of that stuff is actually useful. You have a Buick that's missing a fender, you can go to a junkyard and get a fender. Do you have a junk drawer in your kitchen? I'll bet you there's rubber bands and paper clips in there. None of them are functionless. They just aren't used very often, and therefore they're not subjected to natural selection, or at least they're less insulated from natural selection. That's kind of what they were talking about with junk DNA. Now, what they did find was not that it all had function. What they found was that it was transposed into messenger RNA that in turn ended up doing nothing in almost every single case. So you're misrepresenting the findings, you're misrepresenting the position of evolution, and you're misrepresenting creationists in general.
Okay, Tony, everything you just said is false. First off, the term junk DNA was coined by Japanese geneticist Susumu Ono, not the fellow you said. And you've also what I see you're doing is you're in denial of the fact that evolutionists have been claiming that it's junk. And
No.
what they mean by junk is junk. And they have not said that they believed that the majority of it, or even a large percentage of it, would be discovered to be functional in human beings. That is not right. Your statement, that statement, is a complete misrepresentation of the historical facts. And
I said the author and the year. What do you got?
Also, well, the author is the man is Susumu Ono, and it was 1972. That's when the term junk DNA was coined by him. And so, but you've misrepresented something else here. when creationists have not, you said that it's been discovered that these RNA transcripts from from what has been labeled for 45 years by evolutionists holding back genetic science for 40 years, by the way, has been discovered to be useless in every case. That is I don't know where you got that out of your hat, but
I never said it was useless.
That's false.
I
That
didn't
is
say every
not
case.
true. We don't, Tony, because we don't know the function of many of those RNAs, doesn't mean that they're functionless.
Nobody
This is
said they were.
well, you just alluded that the RNA transcripts from the junk DNA is functionless in every case. You said, I'll quote you, in every case, end quote.
No, I did not.
That is the words that came out of your mouth.
I said in nearly every case they found no function for it.
Nearly every case. Okay, so no, you said is functionless. You did not say they
Didn't
found
say it
no
was
function.
functionless.
No, sir. We're going to play that back later.
Please
and we're
do.
going to see you're wrong. That's not what you said. And so that statement is wrong. I know you're excited and you want to support evolution, but you misspoke if nothing else. So because we don't know the function of it, I've had lots of evolutionists tell me that we don't know the function of those RNAs, therefore they're junk. They don't do anything. I debated Dr. Dan Larhammer, geneticist at the University of Uppsala, Sweden. He made the same ridiculous claim. Oh, they're junk. He said the RNAs, they're useless. They don't have any function. It's not true. We just don't know what the function is because there's a lot that has not been discovered about the cells yet. So again, the junk DNA paradigm of evolutionists, you're in denial of it now. You're trying to say we never really thought it was junk, but lots of scientists have been saying it's junk and it's functionless. And some scientists have even said you could probably snip it out and the cell would go on functioning just fine. And so you've misrepresented the facts.
Well, here's the difference: is that I'm willing to bet you can't find any case where a scientist published for peer review his assertion that none of that DNA had any purpose or function. I guarantee you can't do it. Why? Because it hasn't happened. And so I don't care about what an individual scientist said off the cuff to you in the middle of a debate trying to rescue his own position against your gish gallop from one thing to this. What I care about is what is presented as science. And if you want to tell me that the textbooks are wrong, I'll go ahead and agree with you. I think textbooks are written poorly. I think they're doing their best to present science well, but it's difficult, especially when I hear misrepresentations like this. I have actually presented the quote from Cummings in 1972. Now, maybe Susumu Ono was attempting to compete with him with the term junk DNA, but the first to publish it was Cummings in 1972, and I challenge you to prove me
he may have published it. He didn't coin the term. Ono coined the term.
So he didn't publish it to and stake his reputation on it, right?
If I say something first, that doesn't mean I have to publish it. Okay. So, but Tony, you've misrepresented the facts here. The evolutionists have been claiming for 45 years that the majority of DNA, because it doesn't code for proteins, is in fact junk, and they thought it functionless. So, what you're doing is an evolutionist attempt to save face. In fact, in the light of these facts, evolutionists like to cover up the fact that they've made these scientific blunders for 40 years, and by saying, well, we never really thought it was junk, it's just leftovers, and so somehow it's still being used even though it's junk. That's not what the scientists have believed. That's not what secular scientists have been believing for 40 years.
So gentlemen, you have about 10 more minutes left in this section, and I have to be honest, I think that the junk DNA argument has been played out between the two of you. I've paused the time.
Yeah,
and the only reason why I say that is because Neff, it seems like you're arguing against the idea that evolutionists have this perspective. Tony doesn't think evolutionists have that perspective. So going down that rabbit hole doesn't really tether to the topic of this particular debate. So I would very much like to get back on track with that. And if references are going to be used, if at all possible, references that the both of you are familiar enough to talk about, because when bringing up references that the other person doesn't have access to or is familiar with, it lends itself to cross-talking. Let's try to reduce the amount of cross-talking and just get to the genuine points that the two of you want to bring up. So I'm going to start the clock again. Please proceed.
Okay, so I'll just go ahead and address two more of your arguments. Number one, nurses and doctors that work in the medical profession and see patients, they are applying science, but they aren't the ones that are making the discoveries. They're just benefiting from the discoveries that other scientists make. No disrespect to what they do. They know a lot, and that's great. And possibly they even know more than the people that actually make the discoveries in many cases. But all they are doing is applying the work that other people have done. No disrespect to you as well, Mr. Christopher. At the same time, the other one I was going to talk about, ID, you were talking about Michael Behe. Michael Behe accepts ID, but he has no problem with evolution. He just thinks that in certain places it required an intelligent designer to be along the way. But he has no problem with evolution.
I understand that. But you've fallen into an evolutionist hole there, Tony. Because there are people who believe in evolution or creation, is not an argument against whether or not creation or evolution is being applied in science. This really makes no difference. Who believes what? What the data, what the facts are, that's what matters. That's the only thing that matters. Now, you believe, I assume, like so many evolutionists, that the changes that occur in bacteria that enable them to become immune to an antibiotic is evolution in progress. Do you not? As every evolutionist I've ever heard speak on the subject or engaged with has acknowledged. Do you not agree with everybody else?
Let me restate what you just said, because I want to make sure that I'm not misrepresented by that answer, because it is, if I was thinking of it from what I think is your point of view, it's a leading question. The answer to your question is, do I believe, or I do in fact believe, that antibiotic resistance is a product of changes in allele frequencies in bacteria over time? Certainly. But I have agreed with you ahead of time to separate just a simple change in allele frequency from macroevolution, which is which is that same process after speciation has occurred. I'm not saying that they've speciated yet.
Yeah, that's to me irrelevant. You believe this is an evolutionary process, don't you? Because every evolutionist I've ever heard speak about it, and every evolutionist I've ever engaged with, cites bacterial immunities as an example of evolution ongoing. Microevolution, macroevolution, irrelevant to me. They call it evolution. It's evolutionary process. Isn't that true? And
well, first of all, you just asked me a question. Let me answer. I don't care what other evolutionists have said to you. I don't care what somebody who debates you on a YouTube channel has ever said. What I'm saying is what I say and what my position is. Okay. So don't ascribe to me other people's positions.
Okay.
I'm so more than, if you want me to gang up on them with you to tell them that they're wrong, feel free. I will.
Okay. Oh, so you disagree with them that this is evolution in action?
If by evolution you mean a change in allele frequency, no. If you mean evolution as in something beyond the species level, again, I would agree with you that it is not a change beyond the allele frequency. But you have a different definition of evolution. And I'm not going to speak to your definition of evolution. No, I'm going to speak to the scientific definition of evolution.
Yeah, I don't have a definition for evolution. I just accept that evolution is what evolutionists say it is, according to them, anyway. So I'm glad to hear that you say these things. However, then because then it seems you disagree with every evolutionist I've ever spoken to, including PhDs that who are geneticists, for example, that this is an example of evolution in action. And I would, of course, argue with them, as I've already said, this cannot be evolution in action. So what can you cite for me an example of evolution itself that is actually being applied in science?
Yes, I can. Give me a moment here. I'll actually bring up a paper I have. But first of all, I don't care if they got if they're a geneticist when they're debating you. Well, first of all, this is an anecdotal thing that you're presenting here, but I can tell you that there was a population of a particular worm called Nereis acuminata, which was isolated on the west coast of the U.S. in California. I'm unable to bring up the paper right now, and I'm going to eventually, but in the interest of not boring everybody, I'll go ahead and continue here. This population, it was 8 individuals that they isolated from the coast of California, and then they went ahead and let them reproduce in a lab for a few years. And then after a while, once they got to several thousand, there was a small population, 2 populations, small populations that they isolated in and brought to Massachusetts. And in Massachusetts, those 2 populations were able to individually continue to propagate. And then after about 20 years, these species were brought back together, or these individual populations were brought back together. The population from the West Coast was no longer able to reproduce with either of the populations on the East Coast. That would be speciation. Any potential or changes in allele frequency from there is by definition macroevolution. Now, you, however, in the past, when we've debated on your particular channel, that you're looking for changes in morphology. Now, on that, I would. Do you have something? I'll let you go ahead and interject.
Anatomy, not morphology.
Okay, the word you use like 7 years ago was morphology. Obviously, you're going to change over time because, that's evolution.
Okay, so Tony, you've fallen into another evolutionist hole. You just claimed that the ring species and this kind of thing, this thinking, is an example of evolution, where the inability of one population to breed with another is an example of evolution.
Real quick interjection. About 4 minutes left, gentlemen. About
okay.
4 minutes left.
But you haven't provided any, that's not an example of evolution. So you've failed there. That the inability to breed cannot be said to be evolution. It doesn't move the organism in its structural design in one iota towards becoming a fundamentally different type of organism. That's not evolution. That's genetic divergence, perhaps, but that doesn't show a structural design change in the organism that has arisen because of a change in genetic information. That's what you got to have if you're going to say evolution occurs. So you haven't provided an example of evolution there at all. That's not evolution.
Well, first of all, you're using your definition of what evolution is. You're not using the scientific definition, once again, which is evolution at or beyond the speciation point.
If you're right about that.
Hold on. Oh, no, I let you finish talking. You can show me the same respect. Now,
let him finish.
So what you're saying is something should become a fundamentally different creature. Now, I'm going to tell you this, that's not what evolution presents. What evolution says is that you're going to stay the same thing as your ancestors, but you're going to diversify in a different path than the other descendants from that ancestor. So for a good example here, I'm going to show you these here. Well, hopefully people can see these. In fact, share, there we go. I think I'm hitting share. Okay, so these are a bunch of different species here. There are different species of dog. Most people would probably think they're think they're different animals, but really, when you know what they are, they're the wolf. All of these are descendants, very different morphologically, and then I would say they are not that much different from this particular species. These particular species here, but.
Tony, if you're showing a picture, it's not showing up.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, doesn't that suck? What are you seeing?
Just notes. I just see the term
Maybe laugh out loud.
Oh, really? Well, that sucks. I thought I was showing that. Were you seeing it earlier?
No, it's the same stuff.
Wow, because all I see is these pictures of skulls. All right, well, I guess I'm done.
Okay, well.
See me now?
No. Maybe you had to go to the pictures itself on your computer. I'm not sure.
Share now? I don't know. I can't see anything. Okay. I don't know what to do.
Well, regardless of the pictures, if you can make your point. So the pictures were different species of dogs. Like, just describe what the picture was so that you can get to your point. I've added a couple minutes to the time because of technical difficulties. I don't think that you should be.
Can you see those?
Time to that. I can see it in
Yes.
the Zoom chat, but it's not being broadcast to the YouTube channel.
Oh.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's not being
I'm
universally
gonna try one more
shared.
time. How's that? No?
Yeah, we see your computer screen, but no pictures.
Oh, well, that doesn't work. All right. Well, there you go.
We see the pictures in your little window, but not full screen.
Yeah.
I'm not sure
Leave
why.
it the way that it just was. I think that we'll be able to get the point.
Yeah.
I see dog skulls. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
And
So there's
then
morphological
look how
difference.
different those are. But then when you look at these, not as different. But I'm sure you're going to be the first one to say that the macaques are nowhere near the same species as a human. So as far as morphological difference, it's kind of irrelevant, as opposed to the differences between humans and, say, their chimp ancestors. When you consider that dog skulls are that much of a diversity. So I don't know what you're asking for. The evolutionary theory, though, is about changes in allele frequency.
Yeah. Can I share something now?
Please do.
Would you mind?
I think that would be fine.
Okay. Yeah. So, here. Okay. So great. Dog skulls are different in morphology. These are human skulls. They differ in morphology too. That's not evolution either. Okay, morphology doesn't equal evolution. Evolutionists believe any change constitutes evolution, but change does not constitute evolution. Here's the Tong child. Evolutionists claim this is ancestor of human beings. Really? There's a skull of an adolescent chimpanzee right next to it. Guess what it is? It's a baby chimp. It's not a human ancestor. It's just a baby chimp. So human skulls vary considerably too. But that's not evolution. But what you've done then now is you seem to be running from evolution, which I find evolutionists often do when you bring to bear their claims. You're claiming that you've attempted to say that this is not evolution of bacterial immunities. But so, Tony, the question is this: if fundamentally different types of organisms never arise, and we only see varieties of elephant, but they're always elephant. Can evolution theory, and that were true of all the taxa of living things, could we say that we see evidence of evolution occurring? Would evolution theory, even if evolutionists didn't believe that fundamentally different types of organisms arise by incremental change? Isn't that true?
Well, first of all, the thing you said was that changes in morphology don't equal evolution. And then you said that all descendants of elephants would be elephants. But if we see a change in morphology in elephants, which is all we see over time, and we see speciation, which you now say isn't evolution either, then I don't understand what your argument is, since we see both changes in allele frequency, we see speciation, and third of all, I said both at the beginning, but third of all, we also see morphological change even within species.
Yeah, and
so
I
don't know what
Tony,
you're arguing, and I don't know what you think I'm running away from.
Well, it's clear that the kinds of changes evolutionists point to are not evolution at all. They don't move an organism towards becoming a fundamentally different type of organism. Bacterial immunity is another one. This is why you're running from it. The changes to allele frequency doesn't provide evidence of it. Differences in the shape of the skull of a dog are not anatomical. That doesn't show us that a dog is producing something non-dog. And neither in any example do we know in this world, living or fossil. So what you're claiming is examples of evolution, like creatures not being able to breed with each other, doesn't promote in any way, doesn't provide evidence that organisms change in such a way as to produce fundamentally different types of organisms over any imaginable period of time. So my point is this: it's not evolution. Okay, you think
All right. We have to wrap this up, Neff. We have to wrap it up.
Not. Yeah, I'll just say evolutionists think they're applying evolution to science. but they're not, because these are imaginary processes. They're processes that result in something imaginary, and they don't have the ability to create the fundamentally different types of organisms evolution claims arise.
All right, so now it's time to go to the closing statements. Excuse me. Tony, since you had started, I'm going to allow you to begin the closing statements as well. These are to last 5 minutes. I will set the timer, and Tony, you can begin your closing statements. Your closing statement.
All right, folks. I would try to go ahead and podcast or make this an actual cast, but I've been messing it up recently. The point of the debate was supposed to be about the scientific applications of creationism versus those of evolution. Over the course of the past hour or so, NephilimFree has failed to present any real-world applications for creationism. As I predicted, what he did was take already observed phenomena and apply them and then say they were creationism. But nobody predicted them ahead of time. The strength of evolution is that you can just take a little bit of evidence, use the assumption of evolution, even if it's 100% wrong, and predict the future evidence. Now, his claim that designed features were used to predict technology is just a result of observing and then retroactively crediting it to creationism. He's also gone out of his way to misrepresent evolution in the way that I see over and over, not just by him, but everybody, including Hovind and every other person that I've ever dealt with in this particular subject matter. Nobody is saying that the descendant of a dog would ever be anything but a dog. Well, let me rephrase that. Nobody is saying that the descendant of a dog would ever stop being a dog. What they would say, though, is that the descendant of a dog could be different than other descendants of a dog. They'll still be dogs, but they'll be different. And that is what we do, in fact, observe. Now, if you want to compound those, you'll see there's a difference there. Now, as far as being shut out of scientific community, the creationism thing, creationism, it's not being shut out of science, it's useless. As I said at the beginning, even if creationism were 100% correct, it still has absolutely zero applications. It is therefore not science. Conversely, if evolution were 100% wrong, you are currently benefiting from countless applications of the theory. So to give you some examples of not just evolution, but everything that just isn't part of the creation model. If you're accessing this debate right now, the fact that there is an internet and devices to access it with, it's due to the physics behind the Big Bang Theory. If you even know about most of the fossil species in any, pardon me, I'm going to move forward here. All right, the fact that we even know about most of the fossil species in any proposed transitional lineages, whether or not there even are transitional, it's due to the testing of predictions made by evolutionary theory. If you are driving a car in your daily life, you are benefiting from the application of uniformitarianism to find these minerals like oil and coal and gold. And you know what? Just a couple months ago, a new synthetic organism was announced, and it's able to digest the plastics that are polluting not just our oceans, but just about everywhere on the planet. And it's due to applying the predictions of abiogenesis. So it doesn't matter which version of evolution you want to address. Every single one of them makes predictions that we can apply into the real world. So unlike creationism, you can call evolution unproven all you want. You can call it a lie all you want. You can call it dangerous all you want. You can try to refine it all you want. What you can't honestly do is claim that evolution has no scientific applications. So again, I want to say thank you to Standing for Truth, to Praise I Am That I Am, to Christopher Mowdy, and to NephilimFree, of course. And especially a huge thank you to everyone watching right now.
Well done, Tony. So that was Tony's closing statement. We are now going to move on. Neff, you now have 5 minutes for your closing statement. Show us what you got.
All right. So evolutionists believe they're applying evolution to science when they're only providing their philosophy to science. My opponent was not able to provide an example of evolution being applied in science. Instead, what he pointed to are two things which are not even evolution. Changes in bacterial immunities, for example, changes to the morphology of a skull. Neither of these have play any part in an organism moving towards becoming a fundamentally different type of organism. They don't change the structural design of an organism one iota. In fact, in bacterial immunities could only be happen if intelligent design were true. That's creation. Intelligent design is a symptom of creation. When somebody wants to create an automobile, they have to design it intelligently, and it's going to show that it's been intelligently designed. I've shown that Tony's statement that we can't find predictability in creation is false with my examples. And I could provide other examples of scientists predicting something based upon a young Earth creation model, and then the subsequent data verifies their prediction is correct. Tony said that, well, that can't be shown. I've shown 3-4 examples. I could show a dozen more. So that's absolutely not true. I've shown also that the design features of living things, which cannot be a product of evolution, are being applied in science constantly in development of new technologies and in all kinds of fields of science, in many fields of science. And those things cannot be a product of evolution any more than bacterial immunity or the change in morphology of the skull of a dog. So these are not changes to evolution. What we did see, though, is that my opponent ran from evolution theory by saying that, acknowledging that bacterial immunity doesn't really show evolution. And if I pressed him on the skulls dog thing and we had the time to do it, I'd probably get him to admit, well, that's not really observed evolution. That's just the shape of the thing. And then we hear him go so far as to say, well, the evolution provides us, doesn't tell us that the offspring of something will ever change, but extrapolated over time, that's exactly what evolutionists claim, that a fundamentally different type of organism will arise. What is evolution theory posit, after all? I mean, I just can't get it, So evolutionists, when you put them on the spot, they often start to run from their own theory. Now, he mentioned ichthyostega and fish evolution into amphibian tetrapods. This is an article I produced over 10 years ago. Tony told me in an email he's read it. If you read this article, you'll see that the whole fish to amphibian tetrapod idea is junk science. It's not science. The features of these creatures do not show evolution from land-dwelling into land-dwelling creatures from amphibian tetrapods. That's a scientific idea that's completely bogus. And one of the things that proves that is this right here. The roofing and snout bones of these creatures, they advance, they change, going up, down, every which way from Sunday. This is like saying a bicycle evolved into a truck and then it went back to a motorcycle, and then it evolved into a space shuttle, and then went back to being a car, and then went on forward to being it's ridiculous. It's a story in their mind. It's not science. So he also addressed the cosmic radiation background, but what he didn't fail to tell you is that the horizon problem, which is something that scientists universally acknowledge, is astrophysicists, for example, is a problem for their idea that the cosmic background radiation was produced by a big bang. I'd say it was produced by a big creation, because the horizon problem tells us that you can't get the cosmic background radiation to be so homogeneous using the billions of 4.5 billion years of age for the Earth, or even 15.5 billion years of age for the universe. It's not nearly enough time. You need 100 or hundreds of billions of years time for the cosmic background radiation to become so homogeneous. So God could have created it that way, like that, if He wished. It cannot have gotten there over 15 billion years. You need exponentially more time than that. So he didn't tell you about the horizon problem. So in conclusion, what we've heard is no evidence of evolution being applied in science. We've heard ideas that something is evolution. And then when queried about whether something is 28 seconds, thank you, sir, that something is evolution, examples of what evolutionists call evolution, my opponent tries to back swim on that and almost agrees with me that it's not evolution, and therefore those examples can't be applied to science either. So I think I've shown that creation does provide predictability. creation is applied in science, and the philosophy of evolutionists has never been nor can ever be applied to science.
Okay, so that was Neff's closing statement. So again, we are at the end of our debate, but not completely the end. But wait, there's more, just when you thought it was safe. We are going to have another 20 minutes of Q&A. The cues are coming from you, the viewing audience. And if you like what you see, I'm sure that I'm sure that SVT would very much love for you to like their channel and subscribe and, you know, do all the thumbs up, happiness, social media things that make social media churning the way that it does. But let's begin our 20-minute question and answer period. And I'm actually going to take a little bit of a liberty being the moderator. And I'm going to throw out the first question because this is supposed to be about whether or not science or, evolution or creationism is applicable in science. And it's pretty clear that the two of you are working from different definitions. Like there is not a meeting of the minds about what operational definitions are for any of these terms. And I think that that has contributed to a little crosstalk. That being said, I would like each of you to at least define what you see evolution as and what you see science as. And Tony, I'd like to start with you. Tony, you're muted. I can't hear you.
Sorry about that, guys.
There it is.
All right. Evolution, I mean, ultimately, it just means change over time. But when we're talking about biology, it literally means the change of allele frequencies over time. Now, there is also the fact that these allele frequencies correspond to phenological changes, morphological changes. They're expressed. So that is a consequence of it. And that is what we're actually debating here is the validity of common descent, which is the theory of evolution that all life on Earth that we are aware of descended from one common ancestor. What it doesn't say is that anything changed what it was. If it became something else, it still retained what it was. It just happens to be more. So to use a very non-evolutionary example or non-macroevolutionary example, dogs, the first dog was not a poodle and it was not a Great Dane and it wasn't a Saint Bernard, but we now have poodles that are still dogs, but they are not Saint Bernards. They're not Great Danes. Now you extend that change over time, you now have what we're talking about macroevolution when they're changed enough, they're speciated. So to say that really quickly, change in morphology happens all the time. Speciation makes that change permanent. Now, as far as what science is, ultimately it's the product of the application of the scientific method. As I said earlier, the scientific method goes like this. You have a theory. You want to explain the matter you see or whatever phenomena you see, and you explain it by making a hypothesis, which goes like this. If we assume this to be true, then we should expect to see this when we perform this experiment or observation. And what I have presented, whether NephilimFree wants to admit it or not, is that the discoveries we've made in science have come from taking a theory and saying, well, if that theory is true, we should expect to see, let's just say, for example, Acanthostega or Tiktaalik in this particular strata, in this particular location, when we do this particular observation. That is the difference. The science is the application of the scientific method.
Okay, fair enough. So, Neff, I would like for you to take a little bit of time to explain how you define evolution and how you define science, please.
Okay. All right. According to evolutionists, evolution is a process whereby organisms change in their structural design incrementally over time, which gives rise to new structural designs in their body plans, which ultimately results in fundamentally different types of organisms. If that didn't happen, there'd be no evolution theory. If evolutionists didn't believe that happened, then there wouldn't even be an evolution theory. That's what evolution theory is in a nutshell. That changes occur which give rise to structural design changes in the anatomy of living things, ultimately producing fundamentally different types of organisms over a vast age of time, period of time. So that's what evolution theory is. Now, what science is in truth, science is queries about the creation and investigative processes to discover its properties and how it functions. Science is a method, and it is a method of investigation to find an answer as to what is the cause of a phenomenon. And this is the scientific method. The scientific method can't be applied to evolution. Evolution theory is a set of hypotheses about the arrival of new features in living things which give rise to fundamentally different types of organisms. There's not even any examples that we can point to in all of biological fauna to point to that we could use to apply that to. So it's my opinion that evolution theory is a philosophy, but it's not science.
Okay, so now that we've got that out in the open, I'm going to now turn it to the audience, the awesome audience that is now going to be the interactive and engaged awesome audience, where they're going to be able to ask questions and have the two of you answer them. Tony, you're in the hot seat for the first question, brother. NIFB Javier Ramos asks, how can adaptation work because genes always stay the same within the same species? I'll say it again. How can adaptation work because genes always stay the same within the same species?
Genes don't always stay the same within the same species. They don't even stay the same within the same family. Do you look like your dad? Probably resemble him, but you don't look completely like him, except in probably a few very random examples. You probably don't look exactly like your mom either. Now, here's the thing. From birth, you have well over 100 different mutations that you did not have, that your parents did not have. And you will gain several more of your lifetime. So not even you are the same at the end of your life as you are at the beginning of your life. So the question really doesn't apply, and it also isn't an application of the theory.
All right, Neff, I got you in the hot seat. Please define, and this is from Emotionally Stunted Emoticon. Please define anatomical change in biology.
Okay, anatomy is the study of the features of organisms and where they lie in the body plan of an organism. And evolution posits that changes over time to result in fundamentally different types of organisms. So the definition of anatomy and morphology and these things, they're freely available on the internet.
Okay, and he has a follow-up to the second part to that question. Apparently, there's a person called Rawmat. Rawmat accepts that rice, corn, and bamboo are all the same kind. Aren't they anatomically different? And if not, explain why.
Well, I haven't examined those examples, so I don't want to speak for somebody else. I can't actually comment on it because I haven't studied that specific subject about the relationship of these, or whether real or imagined, of these different taxa.
Hey, I know I'm speaking out of turn here. That was a good question, and Nephilim gave a great answer to it, and it would be the same answer I would give. So could you give a reference for that?
To whom are you asking the question, Neff?
No, the person that actually asked that question. I mean, I'm not refuting them. I just had never heard that those are the same. I mean, I know that cabbage and kale and all those came from mustard seeds, but I'd love to hear about the common nature of rice and corn. I've never heard that before.
And I'm a little confused by the question because he used the word kind. I don't know whether he's referring to like Kent Hovind will frequently talk about kinds as his categorization word of choice. I don't know whether he's using it in that term or in a more scientific term. But to your point, Tony, emotionally stunted emoticon. If you can pull a reference for the fact that rice, corn, and bamboo are the same kind, or that somebody says that, if you can pull a reference for that and post it, that would be great. Excuse me. Moving back to you. Let's see, Tony, what do we got here? For some reason, I don't really have that many more for you. Hold on one moment. There are more. Oh, yes, there are more. Okay, Tony, how do outside pressures and forces affect blind reproduction to produce an offspring that can survive in changed conditions? I know that this is a very complex. There's even more to this question, but I think that's a lot to bite off. This is from Colin Smith. I'll say it again. How do outside pressures and forces affect blind reproduction to produce an offspring that can survive in changed conditions? Considering reproduction doesn't think or blah, 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 blah. There's more to the question.
Fair enough. It's a fair question. In our daily lives, we see people that are more adapted. They either can run faster or they're stronger, they can climb faster, they can speak faster, they can think better than others. I mean, we all have different abilities. And as the environment changes, your particular set of skills are more likely to, the environment just might be perfect for your set of skills, and for somebody else, not so much. And so from there on, you're more likely to reproduce. The person who's not as adjusted to this environment is less likely to reproduce. It has, in case somebody wants to bring it up, it's not about death, it's about reproduction. Now, that said, if you're more likely to reproduce, you're more likely to continue. If you're less likely to reproduce, you're less likely to continue. It isn't an absolute. There are certain people who are definitely not fit for the environment that tend to reproduce. And they have a chance, perhaps their offspring probably have a chance in the next generation. But it has the impact of the environment is just your playground. And if you're better suited to play in that playground and reproduce, you just happen to be more likely to continue. That's it.
Okay, question. Moving on to Neph. Ask Neph. This is from Beej Price. Why I'm trying to decipher this. Why do fetuses have lizard muscles in their hands that disappear before birth? Why would intelligent design do that?
Well, I'm not familiar with that, but the assumption that they're lizard muscles, I think, is the problem. During fetal development is an outrageously complex process. It's so, in fact, complex, the expression of various sets of genes being turned on and off like the instruments in an orchestra, in a humongous orchestra that would fill a gigantic stadium, in fact, being turned on and off in concert to develop to specialize cells and to prescribe their arrangement and to create the structural designs of an organism is so complex that man will probably never be able to fully decipher it, no matter how long we study genetics. I think anybody gives honest consideration to that fact, the mind-bending complexity of phenotype of the fetal development process, would drop evolution like a rock if they were intellectually honest with themselves. Evolutionists make many assumptions, that this is humans have this feature in them that came from lizards or fishopods, and none of those have really bared out. I see it as an assumption that this was a lizard muscle First of all, is it really a muscle? I'd have to examine the papers, find out, is it a muscle? Does it come and does it go? Does it have a purpose? Does it actually transform into a different muscle? I need more details than what I've been provided. And I'm quite sure that if I studied the subject, I'd find it's no such thing as a lizard muscle. This is just based on an evolution paradigm. It's an assumption that doesn't hold water.
All right, Tony. Colin has another question for you. How do you justify uniformity and basic abstract laws of logic apart from your own experiences?
I don't really know what the question is asking.
I think that it's trying to get at, there's some follow-up questions, trying to get at the difference between objectivity and subjective experience, right? Is uniformity in nature objective? If so, how do we know that apart from experience? Seems to be a subjective, objective kind of a question that dances on that distinction.
I'll do my best to answer that question, but I'm not sure how the two go. I mean, if you're talking about the subjective forces, excuse me, pardon me. When I talk about uniformity, I'm usually talking about geological uniformity. So if you're going to talk about the forces at work in a particular area versus over the overall world, well, I guess that's the answer. Subjectivity is in one area, whereas objectivity would be the entire map that we're playing with, which would be the entire world. If you're talking about our personal experience, well, there's a different question. All we can do is comment on our own subjective experience. So, yeah, it is very likely. And so when I talked about this from the beginning, I said I'm working under the assumption that evolution is completely wrong and that evolution is completely right. And so that even in that case, we are able to make these predictions based on evolution. Now, that's basically a statement about what we've experienced subjectively as a species or as a community. But there is always a chance that all of it is completely wrong. We just happen to have made so many guesses right beforehand. I hope that answered the question. I really do.
I think that it was rooted in like more presuppositional apologetics, which try to. Well, I'm not going to, as moderator, I'm not going to get into explaining what that is. But that's an assumption of mine. Well, actually, Colin just posted something. You can't justify uniformity apart from your experiences. In other words, the scientific method cannot justify the scientific method. So he's pointing out a circularity, a philosophical circularity, it seems.
Okay, so then I guess the difference is when it comes to the scientific method, it's based on what I can show you and what you can show me. Now, you're welcome to believe in creationism all you want, but once you ask me to believe it, then I'm going to ask you for evidence. And if you can present a prediction based on creationism, I'm more than happy to consider it. Now, when it comes to evolution, I can make predictions and I can present them to you. It's up to you whether you accept them. But I mean, it all comes down to I can present my evidence. I can take the assumption of uniformity and find oil for you. I can take the assumption of quantum mechanics and create the internet or create a computer for you. I can take the assumption of the theory of relativity and get a guy to the moon. What can you do with creationism? That's what I've been asking this entire debate.
All right, and so we only have a couple minutes left for this Q&A section. So, Neph, how would you like to answer Tony's question that he just asked?
Well, I would just say that our ability to predict and to discern the properties of things and to be able to apply them depends on the existence of objective reality, and I think that that wouldn't be if subjectivity If there is no objective reality, then science wouldn't exist. Our thoughts wouldn't exist. We couldn't observe, test, demonstrate, or repeat anything. The existence of an objective reality is everything is dependent upon the existence of an objective reality. So the fact that we're here, the fact that we're thinking about it, the fact that we can show things, demonstrate things, hypothesize about things, demonstrates objectively that there is a reality that has a fundamental basis that is so a basis that is so fundamental that I don't believe the atheist or evolutionist worldview could begin to account for it. That's my thoughts.
Hey everybody, today we are debating whether or not creationism makes testable predictions, and we're starting right now. Ladies and gentlemen, thrilled to have you here. This is going to be a blast, folks. It is an exciting day today. I really enjoy these, and I have to let you know, we have both, you could say, experienced veteran debaters on today, both of which are linked in the description. And also want to let you know, these guys, they've been through it before. This is a, you could say, retaliation, vengeance. They're going at it again. So this is a brand new topic. We've never gotten to have this one. If you are new here, consider hitting that subscribe button, as we have a lot more debates coming up that you won't want to miss. And if you hit that notification bell, you'll be reminded of them. For example, not this Monday, but the following Monday, we just confirmed it, like seconds before we went live. Got an email back from Destiny, where Destiny will be coming on Monday, November 11th, to debate praise on whether or not Trump is racist. It's a juicy one, very provocative, and we're not going to take much time. We want to get right into this. So, very excited. Whether you be Christian, atheist, Republican, Democrat, we're glad you're here as we try to build an eclectic community. And we're going to have Tom go first today. So, basically a quasi-formal debate. It's basically a 5-minute opening from Tom, then a roughly 5-minute kind of response from Standing for Truth, then 40 minutes of open discussion, just how you like it, followed by 5-minute closings, and then Q&A. So if you have a question, feel free to shoot it into the live chat. I will pull those questions out of the live chat into a list. If you want to do a super chat, you can basically fire that into the live chat. It'll go to the top of the list for the Q&A, and also it allows you to make a comment toward one of the speakers during the question and answer. So with that, very excited to have both of you on. Thanks very much to Standing for Truth and Tom for coming on today. Tom, I've got the timer set for 5 minutes, and the floor is all yours.
All right, so the topic we're debating today is whether or not creationism can make testable predictions. And the reason we're looking into this is we're trying to figure out, is creationism true? And the way we establish that is the same way we establish anything is true. We have to have some criteria to differentiate whether or not whatever is being proposed is imaginary or real. And so we need some way to differentiate between what's imaginary and what's real. And anything that can do that is evidence. So we need some criterion to do this. And the criterion science uses is predictions. Novel testable predictions, and that's what we use as evidence. And so can creationism make these novel testable predictions and demonstrate that it's not just an imaginary explanation that's been made up like phlogiston, and it's a real actual thing? So what does this mean when we say we need novel testable predictions? Well, there's infinitely many ways to explain anything. Any phenomenon, event, occurrence, observation has infinitely many reasonable ways to explain how it happened. For example, imagine we see a cup fall over. What could have caused this to happen? Well, maybe it was the wind, or someone bumped the table, or maybe it was caused by a mouse or a squirrel or a bird, or it could have been caused by a meteorite falling from the sky or invisible aliens. Maybe somebody used psychic powers to knock it over, or magic. Maybe it was a ghost or a fairy or a leprechaun or even a god. Maybe the whole world was created 5 minutes ago with the cup already lying on its side, and the memories of seeing it fall are just illusory. Or it could have been created 6 minutes ago or 7 minutes ago or 8 minutes ago. We can come up with infinitely many ways to explain how the cup fell over. But how do we determine which of these infinitely many ways is the best explanation? Well, all of them all of the infinitely many explanations, except one of them, are the truth, or except one of them are imaginary. So there's only one truth, and all of the other infinite ones are imaginary. So we need some criteria to differentiate between which ones are the imaginary, which ones are the real ones, or justified ones to believe. Now, one approach is to take all past and present observations, everything we know about the event, and see which possible explanations can explain all of the data. However, this approach is fundamentally flawed because using ad hoc reasoning, all past and present observations can be explained by all of the different explanations. For example, if we saw mouse droppings around the cup And if my explanation was that a mouse knocked over the cup, I could, of course, say, well, clearly the mouse knocked over the cup and left the mouse droppings. However, if my explanation was a mouse did not knock over the cup, I could say a mouse came and left all the mouse droppings and walked away without knocking over the cup, something else being the cause. So any explanation could explain the observation we see of the mouse droppings after we see them. And we can always say this for any observation. We can make any observation consistent with our explanation, no matter what it is. So we can't use past or present observations as the basis for determining which one's the best, because they can all explain all past and present data, which means we have to use future testable predictions. We have to be able to predict into the future something we don't currently know. And if we can do that consistently and reliably, then that's a good reason to believe whatever our explanation is the best one. So if you can say something like, given my explanation, I can predict something that we will discover in the future, which we don't know yet, which the other explanations have not anticipated and will only be able to explain ad hoc or post hoc after we discover it, that's the best explanation. So, and the predictions can't just be any predictions. You can't like predict, I predict the sun's going to come up tomorrow. Like that's not very good, because anybody can predict that. It's already something we know. So the predictions have to have certain kinds of criteria to qualify as predictions to be evidence. For example, I can make the prediction there's going to be a man named Bob in that direction, and you can look in that direction. If you don't see Bob, I can say, well, you just haven't looked far enough. You got to go farther. And you keep looking, and you still don't see Bob. I can say, well, no, you just got to keep looking, keep going, go. And I can say that ad infinitum. Just keep saying, well, if you haven't found him yet, keep going. And since that prediction can never be proven wrong, that isn't a good prediction. So it's the predictions you make have to be falsifiable. You have to be able to say, Bob is X distance away, and if he's not X distance away, then I'm wrong. If you can't say that, it's not a prediction. Also, the prediction I could make would be like if I said the sun will rise tomorrow. Like, obviously, everyone can predict the sun's going to rise tomorrow. It's something we already know. So you can't just predict things we already know. You have to predict something we don't know yet, something novel. Also, I can make the prediction that billions of light years away, there's a teapot floating in space. Like, even if that may be the case, because we can't actually verify that it's correct, it's not a prediction. It's not useful, because you have to actually show it's correct before it actually counts as evidence for your conclusion. So the predictions have to be verifiable. Also, I can make numerous predictions at random, just like the next lottery ticket number is going to be XYZ, and just keep making predictions, and eventually I might get one right. But the fact that I can make numerous predictions isn't evidence, even if I get one right, because anybody can just make like infinitely many predictions and happen to get one right. That's not evidence of anything. So the predictions have to be precise, because the same thing applies to like allegory and parable, because they can be interpreted in many different ways. That's the same as making many different kinds of predictions, because you can just pick the interpretation that seems correct and say, you see, I got it right. When in fact, it can be interpreted in many different ways, and most of them were wrong. So the predictions have to be precise. And finally, even if I'm able to make such predictions as I've described above, the explanation I may be accrediting may be different than the one that actually worked. So it has to be the same explanation I'm using has to be able to be used by others to also make other predictions that can be confirmed. It's called peer review, which doesn't just mean that they confirm the same prediction, can make the same result, but that they can use the same model to make other predictions. So in conclusion, for predictions to count as evidence, they must be repeatable, falsifiable, novel, verifiable, precise predictions that are confirmed by peer review. And if you can do that, if creationism can do that, then that's evidence for creationism being true. And that's the question we have here today. Can creationism make those kinds of predictions?
Excellent. Thank you very much, Tom. And with that, just also want to mention before we go into the discussion format, it could be something on my end, but I think it might be that your mic is making kind of like a popping or a crackling, like a click sound. It's kind of loud, Tom. So just in case, I mean, we'll see if Standing for Truth has it coming through too, in which case it's probably my side that's making it happen. But it definitely, there's like a loud clicking that's like slightly abrasive on the ears. We will next go over to Standing for Truth for 5 minutes or so, and glad to have you here, Standing for Truth. The floor is all yours.
Awesome. Thanks so much for setting this up, James. Thanks so much to Tom for doing this debate. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I listened to his opening there, and he's looking for specific criteria to differentiate between what is imaginary and what is real. And this is going to be determined by evidence. This is how we can distinguish between what is imaginary and what is real, as he stated. Do we make novel predictions? The answer is yes. And he states that there are infinitely many ways of explaining anything, right? You can post hoc, ad hoc, reason almost anything. So Tom here wants testable predictions that only future observations can prove to be either true or false. So no post hoc and no ad hoc. Anybody can predict the sun would come up. I agree with that. So if I get into things like there exists massive geological evidence that demonstrates sufficiently that the Earth's layers and rocks are young, fast erosion rates, worldwide sedimentary strata deposition, pancake layered rock strata, cold rock slabs deep in Earth's mantle, indicating a worldwide global flood. These things he may accuse me of as post hoc and ad hoc reasoning. So let's get right into it then. Let's satisfy his criteria. Now, there exists so much evidence for biblical creation, especially in genetics. That's why we can utilize so many different fields of science and make predictions that are testable. Genetics is where the war is won today. And this is because traits are inherited, not bones found in the dirt. The term genetics, for example, wasn't even around during Darwin's day. This is how primitive Darwin's understanding would have been. But this is what's inherited in sperm and egg. Sperm and egg don't pass on a fossil. They pass on an instruction manual, an information system. If we want to find the history of humanity and the origin of species and look at the biblical base model, we need to look at DNA. Evolutionists need to look at DNA as well. We have in all of our cells, for the most part, DNA. And every generation, sperm and egg cell pass on DNA. As we know, and I'm sure Tom here is not going to dispute, DNA changes. There are mistakes that occur. This is a regular process, and therefore we have a clock. All we need is a regular repeating process. In the case of genetics, every generation changes happen, as I've stated. This is basic. Now, if we add up this over, let's say, several generations, there's a history that's then recorded. And because of this, we can look at people around the globe, animals, species around the globe, for example. How many differences exist, DNA differences, that is? For example, how fast does the DNA change and mutate? We literally have a clock in which we can use calculations to test whether or not we humans look young. Do we have an abundance of genetic differences? Has the clock been ticking for a lengthy time or a short time, as creationists would predict? And what we actually see in our DNA is amazing evidence suggesting that we have not been around for millions of years or even hundreds of thousands of years. Why? There's too few DNA differences, and we can make novel, testable predictions based on this data. And we have. It looks like we arose genetically just 6,000 years ago. This is shocking to most people. But this is science. And so we see one of the main arguments against creation is creationists can't make predictions that are testable. This is 100% false. We have and do meet the gold standard of science. We are the ones making the predictions. How do we respond when evolutionists such as TJump tell us creationists, we can't make testable prediction? Well, this question can be answered in a number of successful ways. Many creationists have put in print testable novel predictions, claims about the natural world from which we do not yet know the answer, claims about the rate at which DNA mutates, predictions on the rates at which species form. There are numerous predictions, literal predictions. And what evolutionists are constantly asking for, they're asking for claims that future observations could reveal to either be true or false. And we've made these. One of the claims made by creation scientists, specifically Dr. Nathaniel Jensen, that have been put into print is, hey, look, here's a claim for humans. For example, take African people groups. Nobody has yet measured a particular type of rate that certain DNA mutates in African people groups. There are numbers, yes, literal numbers that says, hey, they're going to change their DNA at this rate, this many changes per generation. There are actual numbers in print regarding these types of predictions. We're just waiting to test them. This is something that we can go and test, like I've said. And the title of this debate is, do creationists make testable predictions? Well, at the end of the day, this was an easy win because whether my opponent agrees or not.
Forgive me, I just realized that I don't know how long you went over 5 minutes. I just looked back at the clock and I realized it ran out. So I'll give you maybe another like 30 seconds if you can wrap it up. And,
yeah, let me just sum up this one prediction then. That's cool.
Thanks so much.
So this is just one then of the many testable predictions made by creation scientists. So we can discuss this one, of course, jumping into the discussion. I've got many more. I mean, at the end of the day, we could probably just end it here and call it a day, but why ruin all the fun? So let's get into not only this prediction, we can get into other predictions. If he wants to talk about something other than genetics, whether it's astronomy or geology, we've made accurate predictions in almost every scientific field. So for now, that's all I'd have to say.
You bet. We are ready for the open discussion, gentlemen. Thanks so much.
All right, first you said my mic was making a weird noise. Is it still making the weird noise? Does Danny hear it?
It's crystal clear now.
No, yeah, it sounds pretty good to me. I don't hear anything.
All right. Was my intro made sense? It wasn't like you didn't cut out my audio or anything?
No, I heard it all. I made some notes. It looks like you're looking for,
I mean, I'm just one sec. I'm checking because James said something about my mic was making a noise. I just want to make sure that's not happening. As long as that's not happening, we're good.
Nope, all
it's
good.
Not anymore.
All right. So yeah, yes, you can definitely make predictions but that isn't the kind of prediction I'm looking for. Like I can predict that if I pray to this Pastafarian spaghetti monster, that a gold brick is going to appear in front of me. That is a testable prediction. But remember, one of my criterion is that you have to have peer review. Other people have to be able to use the same model to also make predictions. So the fact that creationists have come up with ways that they can seem to make predictions doesn't do anything, because no one else can use this model to make predictions, or the ones they do come out to be false consistently. So just like I can say, I'm going to pray to the spaghetti monster to get a gold brick, that's technically a prediction, but it's not the kind of prediction I'm looking for. It doesn't meet the criteria that I outlined in the introduction. So you would have to give some kind of methodology of how you got that, which can then be used to make other kinds of predictions by actual scientists that aren't creationists.
Well, for example, some of the most divergent of African people groups, for example, the Khoisan peoples, their mutation rates have not yet been measured. So what I just explained in my opening there, in my brief opening, is that creation scientists have actually made really, really precise and specific predictions on how fast their DNA would change or mutate according to what we know about genetics. Therefore, that is like me pointing at some random guy on the street and saying, hey, do you play baseball? And he says yes. And I say, this is how far you're going to hit. That is how precise and specific this prediction is. And therefore,
right. But apologize to interrupt, but yes, I can make a precise prediction right now that is super precise, that if I pray to the spaghetti monster, a gold brick is going to appear in front of me in 5 seconds. That is an extremely precise prediction, but no one else can use it to make other predictions. It's totally ad hoc and arbitrary.
Of course we can, because, for example, I'm sorry to interrupt, Dr. Nathaniel Jensen is using observed mutation rates on non-African people groups and coming up with accurate retrodictions of their mutation rate, which actually points to biblical creation. Now he's using that observed mutation rate to make predictions on African people groups that have not yet been measured in regards to their mutation rate. Therefore, evolutionists can do the same thing. We can literally get swabs of their DNA and test this and see if it's true. Therefore, if it's not true, that could falsify that specific model and that specific prediction. So that is
my criticism here. My criticism here is that the scientists have to be able to use his model to make predictions.
Oh,
not just
of course.
him. It doesn't matter if he can do it. They have to also be able to do it. The scientists have to look at the information.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I don't think you understood my point. So that observed mutation rate, scientists in the field of evolution or in the field of, say, creation science, they can use that observed mutation rate, and they can make predictions on not only African people groups or non-African people groups. They can use it on species. They can use it on animals.
That's the part, my understanding of the reason his position fails is because it's arbitrary. Like, his model doesn't actually make accurate predictions. He's just making them up. Like, when the scientists actually look at his model and try to use it to make predictions, they get the wrong results consistently. They can't do it. It's inconsistent. That's the criticism of his position. The scientists can't use his model to make predictions. It's too inconsistent.
Well, here's the thing. It's not inconsistent because some of these predictions, the genetic related predictions, they've already come true. Now, the ones on the Khoisan peoples, they haven't yet because we're still awaiting the data to confirm whether or not that's true. But just recently, we've, based on predictions, mutation rate predictions on animal species, they've actually come true. Now, let's...
Again, that's not the criticism I'm using here. So you can definitely make predictions that come true. I can predict that a gold brick is going to appear in front of me from the spaghetti monster. And even if I get that right, that still doesn't count as evidence until the same methodology can be used by other independent sources to show it worked. So my criticism is that even if he makes a prediction about the genetic decay rate of people in Africa and gets it right, until he presents a methodology of how he made that prediction, and that methodology can be repeated by others who are not him and who are not creationists, then it's not evidence because it's just his made up system.
Well,
Like,
we're
it's
using...
like if I like shook a magic 8-ball and got a result and it happened to be right, I could just shake it again and it doesn't get a result. So the problem here is that how do other people use his model to make results? And they can't. That's the criticism. Scientists look at this model and
no, we
find
can
it doesn't work.
Because we have mutation rates on various species, on various people groups. Now, if we use that, whether it's pedigree-based studies, we can use coalescence calculation.
I'm granting that. I agree with that completely. That's not the criticism. I can say...
Yeah, but the title of this debate is, do creationists make testable future novel predictions? This is a future novel prediction. This specific one hasn't come true yet. I agree with that.
No, remember, the criteria I gave, one of them was must be confirmable by peer review. That is one of the criterion for it to qualify as a prediction. His data is not. And
this can be, for example, we've made predictions on the rates at which many different species have formed. For example, our model, just wait, I want to finish my thought here. I understand you don't agree, but this is
you're missing the point. You're missing the point. I'm sorry. But
no, I think you're missing the point, actually, because this is a future novel testable prediction.
I understand exactly what you're saying. I'm sorry, but no. So remember, in my introduction, I said a peer review does not just mean confirming the same results. It means using the same methodology to make different predictions.
1 second.
So they have to look at his method. They have to be able to use it to consistently make other predictions, and they can't. That's the problem.
Right. No.
One second. Standing for truth. I'll give you a chance to respond, but the live chat's let me know that the clicking is kind of back. Let's see.
I think it might be coming on Tom's end.
It's
you're clicking right now. Is there any clicking?
It's gone, but it's as you're talking. There's definitely a clicking that's coming through. I mean, I don't think they're all hallucinating because I hear it too. But it's just like we can still hear what you're saying. It's just that it's a little bit like it is a little distracting, but we're still able to get your arguments in case we can't get the what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, Reed Nice Wonder says it seems to be only, his hypothesis is that it seems to be only when you're talking more. I think it's maybe when you're talking more loudly, when the volume's picking up on the louder volume, or the when the mic is picking up on the louder volume. I think that might be what's like triggering it. I'm guessing. As everybody at this channel knows, I'm not an expert in audio. So thank you all, by the way, for sticking with this channel when we had that 2-month-long spree of audio meltdowns. That was embarrassing.
Right now?
Yes, we can hear you. It's softer, but I don't think that it would trigger the clicking.
All right. Is it louder now?
That sounds. I think that's good. I think that probably did it. And then staying for truth. Sorry to.
Hear me?
Oh no, that's okay. That's okay. Yeah, we want to make sure that everything's coming through nice and clear. Now, my point is that creationists do have many testable predictions that future observations could reveal to be true or false. He wants it to be peer reviewed. No, I understand. You want it to be peer reviewed. These are the one that I'm about to give. They can be verified through multiple different, if we're going to use this methodology of mutation rates or looking at our mitochondrial DNA or nuclear DNA, evolutionists can do this, creationists can do this. And just because Dr. Nathaniel Jensen himself has done a specific prediction on the Khoisan peoples, this can also be repeated by whether it's scientists in the creation field or the evolution field, because mutation rates, looking at genetics, it's just in its infancy. So these accurate testable predictions, if the evolutionists aren't making accurate testable predictions in the realm of genetics according to their model, then they're the ones not making the testable predictions. I mean, what testable predictions are the evolutionists making in regards to these types of DNA, this DNA data? Do you know?
Yeah, 1 second. So, James, can the audience hear me just to make sure?
I think so. It looks like whatever you did worked. It's crystal clear, and there doesn't seem to be any clicking.
All right. So again, everything you just said is factually, provably wrong. The scientists have objectively said no, they cannot use Nathaniel Jensen's model to make predictions. His model is fundamentally flawed. It's like using a magic 8-ball or a broken compass. You can get it to point wherever you want. That's the criticism. The scientists have looked at it. They found it's completely flawed. They can't use it to make predictions because it's inconsistent. So when you say the other scientists can use it, no, they can't. They've all said they can't. That's the problem.
Well, actually, in regards to here, I want to go. The scientists won't look at it, and here's why. The big picture of it all that I'm trying to get to is the fact that we can literally read the history of civilization that's written in our DNA. And this is literally a head-to-head prediction that is testable for both evolutionists and creationists. And yet the evolutionists don't actually want to go and test this. And this is why. It's because they have a basic assumption that if evolution is true, history, as you know, goes back 200,000 years, right? The first modern humans, and then about 6 million years to the common ancestor of humans and chimpanzees. But if we actually think about the last 3,000 years, Tom, and the history of civilization, that's just the tail end of a long, long, long timeline, according to the evolutionists. So this is just a little time, a little blip in the moment in time that you can hardly expect to see any type of genetic signal. But that's why we've made predictions that this genetic signal, if creation is true, should actually be detected. And we can actually look at events. Well, it's kind of technical. I don't want you to interrupt. You can give me what you think when I'm done it. But we can look at something recent in history, okay? For example,
what is his name? What is his name? Nathaniel Jensen is what you said?
Nathaniel Jensen, yes. So he's working on this right now. Dr. Robert Carter is working on this right now. But we can even look at something recent in history. For example, look at the sad history of the transatlantic slave trade. Okay, here we have millions of Africans forcibly moved against their wishes and moved to the New World. They are now forced to speak other languages than their own language. Essentially, they're speaking European languages, right? But yet genetically, we can clearly see they are African in origin, and obviously history confirms this, okay? So here's the question. How different are they from modern Africans? A piece of biological information that plays a very significant role in these predictions, Tom, and in this debate in general, which is what I'm kind of getting at, is the DNA clock, okay? Every generation, mistakes are added to our DNA sequence. The copying process, as you know, it's not perfect. It's imperfect, this process of genetic mistakes. Now, during the process of sperm and egg and the copying process, mistakes happen. I know you understand this, but if someone were to compare my DNA to my two kids, for example, we would see differences that are not found in either myself or my wife. Anyways, we can look back in time based on these genetic mistakes and based on genetic clocks. So we go back to history, and we know the transatlantic slave trade begins around 1500 AD. It's outlawed mid-1800s. From this point forward, the Africans that are brought over into the New World don't have much contact with Africa. They are separated for about 150 years, maybe a little more. This is numerous generations, Tom, for the African American clock to tick in the New World, independent of Africa. And in 150 plus years, several generations for the African clock to tick within Africa. And so African Americans and Africans have been getting much more different from one another for the last many years. We should be able to read and see that signal. And guess what? This is a prediction that can only be true under a creation model. And we are already seeing this genetic signal. These genetic markers are in our DNA. You can also see it in with the Genghis Khan Empire, the Roman Empire. This shouldn't be true if evolution is true, going back millions and millions of years. It should all just be a jumbled mess. So evolutionists can go and test this, but they won't, because they don't expect that signal to be there. Yet the signal is there. How do you explain that, Tom? And why don't you go make some predictions on it?
Okay, so I just Googled it. I just found about 24 scientists who've looked at his research, including PZ Myers, who have just proven you false. So yes, they have looked at it, they have tested it, and they've
No, they haven't looked at this signal. No, they haven't. They haven't tested this.
This is exactly what they're saying. They're saying they looked at every one of his data, they went through his lectures, they talked with him, they read his books, and they say his model is failed. So yes, they have looked at it. So when you said they aren't willing to look at it, that's completely false. Yes, they have. They've done it, just like I said they did, and they found it's inconsistent and doesn't make predictions. So the only ones who have actually looked at it is Dr. Stefan Frello. There's been a very extensive written debate. I just found one by PZ Myers. I just proved you false. You can find.
Okay, so what did PZ Myers say that actually apparently debunks or refutes his predictions and his work?
I don't have time to read through the many pages that I just found on
Google.
Because
I have. He hasn't looked at this. For one, the information that I'm talking about is going through peer review right now. So there's no way he's in the peer review process. I'll tell you that much.
Well, if it's going through peer review right now, then yes, he probably hasn't seen it, but he has looked at the books he's already published, as I said, and found no, it does not make predictions. So no, nothing Nathaniel has.
This data will go through the peer review process, and it will come out as a confirmed testable prediction. Okay, it's already confirmed, but you want to see it on paper in technical form. That is the topic of this debate. Do creationists make testable predictions? The answer is yes. Do they make novel confirmed predictions? The answer is yes as well. I'm not. Your criteria has been met.
I already just ended that completely. So I just said no. Nathaniel Jensen's model cannot be used to make peer-reviewed things, as confirmed by over a dozen scientists that I just Googled and found, including PZ Myers. So no, his is not qualified. And the one you said he is in peer review, that one might be. I don't know. It hasn't been published yet, so I can't judge it. But all the ones he's published so far have failed the test consistently every time by every PhD scientist who've looked at it. They're like, nope, this doesn't work. So his is not a testable prediction because it isn't confirmed by peer review, as stated by the people doing the peer review.
Okay, for one, whether you agree with it or not, a testable prediction that only future observations will tell us if it's either false or true has been made. So I've met that criteria.
It has to be peer reviewed. If it doesn't peer review,
it's through the peer review process as we speak. Now,
then I mean that's I could just say there's a paper proving that I'm a god in the peer reviewed process. That's not evidence until it actually passes the peer review process. Well, so if it passes, yes, that's great evidence. Happy to accept that. But until then, it's just not.
So you're just not happy with the fact that we don't have the technical peer-reviewed paper in front of us just yet telling us that, hey, we can see the genetic signal in our DNA. That's what you're not happy. If you see that technical paper that has passed through the peer review process that's showing, hey, we can detect the history of civilization, Genghis Khan's empire, Roman Empire, transatlantic slave trade in our DNA, which evolutionists say should not be expected, you will be happy with that confirmed prediction you're saying.
Well, yeah, after it's peer reviewed and passes the peer review process, yes, that's exactly what I'm asking for.
Strict peer review process, so it should be out soon. But I'll definitely be sure to send that to you. But I'll say, even in regards to species, months after speciation predictions have been made, we've actually seen in Darwin's finches, the finches on the Galapagos Island, people have been studying these finches for a number of years. We predict that species should be continuously forming. And guess what? New species have actually been confirmed just recently in finches. And these new species have been published. You can read the published article on it. And evolutionists are shocked by this because, well, as you know, it's supposed to take millions of years. When we run the numbers, the rate at which species are forming, for example, we take this new observation, extrapolate it to the whole globe. This translates, Tom, to an average of 3 to 4 species, new bird species.
Sorry, but you're pontificating. You're pontificating again. So no, evolution does not take millions of years. There's lots of examples of macroevolution where species completely change to completely new species over very small generations. We have lots of examples of that. Just go talk to Aaron Ra. I had an interview with him on where he just listed like a dozen of them. So, but scientists have already confirmed that.
But they're not making specific predictions on the rate at which these species are forming. We've made specific predictions. We're saying on average 3 to 4 new species per year. And we've just seen that these calculations, we're running them. We can run them back. According to our model, we can run the numbers for young Earth creation and factor in the roughly 11,000 bird species on the planet, Tom, that we have today. There's about 4,500 years since the flood. And of course, we see the species of bird came from, let's say, a handful of bird kinds on the ark. 11,000 divided by 4,500. This is basic math. It gives us 2 or 3 species per year. This is exactly what creationists have predicted.
Same exact problem. Until it gets through the peer review process.
No. That one has been. That one has been. But because of, so again, we're taking, just wait, we're taking this data, Tom, and we're taking these recent observations that have been documented on the formation of new species, and we're making predictions on thousands of other species that have yet been measured. That's the whole, now we're taking that data, and any scientist can go and take that data and now make predictions on other species, on how they
That's the
form.
part I'm saying no. That's the wrong part. That's the part that is completely rejected by every single biologist anywhere in the world. They say no, creationism can't provide that. That's why it's not accepted. If it could do that, then it would be real science.
Right,
So,
but they can't. I just proved to you that
Hold on 1 second. Standing for truth. I just want to be sure that Tom was done with that point. I know sometimes it's hard to tell, but go ahead, Tom. You have more?
No problem.
So again, the reason creationism is rejected everywhere in the entire world by all serious biologists is because it can't do exactly what you're saying. If it could, it would be real science. Scientists don't care if creationism is true or not. It doesn't matter if it's true. They just care about what does the science say? What do the facts say? How do we verify things with evidence? They don't care which thing is correct. So the reason scientists don't accept creationism is because it can't do what you're saying it can do. There are a bunch of creationists who have published creationist papers and say they can do this, but when you actually try and pass it through peer review, it's proven false consistently 100% of the time, no matter what, throughout all history. Now, maybe the new papers that are being published, they could be right, and then that would be evidence. I'm happy to concede that, but I'm betting it's going to be like all the past ones, which completely fail on every single test. So you need to actually...
Okay, no, you finish your thought. Go ahead.
No, I'm fine. Go ahead.
So I would disagree, because I would say that the rate at which these species are forming is directly in line with predictions made by Dr. Nathaniel Jensen. The predictions he's made on the African people groups are based on straightforward mitochondrial DNA coalescence equations. They not only reject the evolutionary timescale, they confirm the 6,000 year timescale. His exact quote, his prediction that's on print, okay, I'm going to read it out. He has stated, Dr. Nathaniel Jensen has stated, no direct measurement of the mitochondrial DNA mutation rate has been performed in the most divergent African people groups. Now, he says this, I expect, here's his prediction, that the rate in these groups will be on the order of 1 mutation per 5 to 8 generations or faster. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised, Dr. Jensen says, if these divergent African lineages mutate twice as fast as the non-African lineages, 1 mutation per 2.5 to 4 generations. Now he goes on, he says, now let's make the predictions of this model even more specific. If all modern human lineages trace their genetic differences to ancestors who lived only a few thousand years ago, and this is what I explained earlier, I know it's technical, but he says it here, he kind of puts it in a bit of a nutshell. He says, then the history of civilization must be recorded in mitochondrial DNA. Must be. If it's not, that's falsified.
1 second.
In other words,
standing for truth.
I'm almost done. If what I've described is true, then the Roman and Mongol empires, the Greek conquest, the Persian Empire, and so many other events in recent history must have left their stamp in the mitochondrial DNA. This hypothesis is tested, Tom. I don't know what more you want, man.
So I've already covered everything you've just said. You said that like 4 times, and I've already granted it and proven it doesn't work. So like I can say, let's take all of that you just said and say I made a prediction of all of that, and the way I did it was I shook a magic 8 ball and that number popped out. I mean, if shaking a magic 8 ball, which is an inconsistent method, if you can't show the method is consistent, then it's not evidence. So it doesn't matter. All of that stuff you said, I can just grant it, say, yep, still not evidence, until he can show his method is consistent by having it go to the peer review process. Until the scientist can show his method isn't just bullcrap like shaking an 8 ball, it's not evidence, even if I grant it's right. So again, you have to go through the peer review process. You have to show that scientists who are not creationists can use the same process to make predictions, which has not been done ever. That's the criticism. So it doesn't matter how precise his predictions are. It doesn't matter how new they are. It doesn't matter how many times he thinks he can make them or what other things he can do. Until it's confirmed by the peer review process, it is exactly nothing.
Okay, so I'm going to need you to...
1 sec, standing for truth. Tom, there's the clicking. I think if you talk like a little bit more quietly, I'll crank up your volume on my side, and that might help. And then I just want to be sure that you have plenty of time to respond to Standing for Truth, because Standing for Truth has had a good amount of time, and I want to kind of bring as much balance as possible in terms of time. Do you feel like you've had enough time to be able to address?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay, thanks so much.
Awesome. Yeah, of course. Take as much time. If I'm interrupting, just let me know and I'll stop. So it's just a lot to say. A lot of this is technical, so you're trying to explain it the best way I can for the layman to understand. I think that you're going to have to, for one, cite all your criteria, and you actually cite the papers, because from what I'm saying and the title of this debate, do creationists make testable predictions? These are future testable predictions. I agree that according to your criteria, they don't meet your criteria, but they are future testable. Future observations can tell us whether or not they're true. The history of civilization, Dr. Nathaniel Jensen has assured us that it is detected in our DNA. Yes, the paper itself is going through peer reviewed, but I think you just shot yourself in the foot, because once it actually goes through peer reviewed and I can show you physically the technical paper, well, then you're going to have to admit that yes, creationists make future testable predictions that are actually confirmed. And this is right in our DNA, nuclear DNA, mitochondrial DNA. Anybody can look at this and mimic those same types of testable predictions.
I mean, that'd be great. I don't have any problem with that. Like, I didn't shoot myself in the foot. That's the criteria of evidence. If creationism can do that, I'm happy to grant creationism. I don't care if creationism is true or false. I don't care how old the world is. All I care about is what's true. So if you can do that, that's great. The problem is that it's never passed the peer review process. Nothing in creationism has ever passed the peer review process. It can't be used to make peer-reviewed predictions. You asked what to list all of my criteria on. 1 second while I pull up the thing. Work.
Are you familiar? Are you familiar with any of the confirmed?
One sec, just to give Tom a chance to find this and then make sure he gets this point out. And then sorry to do that, standing for truth. It's just that we've given you've had a lot of airtime. I just want to keep it as balanced as possible. I appreciate your criteria.
So the criteria are repeatable, falsifiable, novel, verifiable, precise, confirmed by peer review. All of those.
Okay, yeah, and it meets all those.
No, again. So zero creationist predictions have ever passed the peer review process. It's done right there.
Right. Now, I'm showing you current predictions being made in the realm of genetics. Are you familiar with the creationist predictions that have been made in the past in regards to geology, astronomy, that have been confirmed after the prediction was made? Are you familiar with those predictions?
Nope.
So, for example, a couple that I can go over is there have been predictions made. Dr. Russell Humphreys, for example, he made predictions based on the creation model.
I apologize. I want to interrupt. Apologize. But again, I don't care if they've been confirmed. I don't care if they're just repeatable, just falsifiable, just novel, just verifiable, just precise. If it hasn't gone through the peer review process, it amounts to nothing. So what you need to do is give me a scientist, an atheist, non-creationist scientist who can use the creationist model to make predictions. That's what I need from you. Show me that atheists can use this to make predictions.
Atheists can use, because guess what? We're living in the same world, and these predictions have been made on the strength. Yes, and they've been made on the strength of several planets' magnetic systems. Okay,
this is not relevant. You need to show me an atheist who can use the creationist model to make predictions.
This model can be used to make predictions on the strength of the planets.
Just to give Standing for Truth a chance to kind of finish, and if
he's not even letting me go over these predictions.
I know.
I've already granted every one of your predictions.
Stuff's technical, Tom. You got to give me a minute to explain it.
You're not getting it. I'm sorry, James. Stop. So again, I don't want to hear any more of your predictions. I can grant all of them. I want you to give me an atheist who can read the creationist paper, use the model. The atheist can make the predictions. I don't want to hear creationist predictions. I want to hear an atheist who can read the creationist paper, use the model to come to consistent predictions. That's what I need.
This model can come to.
1 sec. I want to. Hold on 1 sec. I just want to. I understand that. It totally makes sense. Is that if Standing for Truth takes a minute or two and he goes through it, it's totally okay to just at that point say, hey, Standing for Truth, you didn't do what I asked you to, and kind of show the audience how he didn't. But just to give him a chance,
I've done that 4 or 5 times. Every time he's gone through his little pontification.
Yeah, but all you've had is arguments from authority.
So hold on 1 sec. Is that he's just beginning? So he's only getting 10 seconds into it, and if we let him go 60 seconds and he doesn't do it, then for sure point out. But it's just that it's kind of early to jump in.
All right.
Fair enough. Okay.
Sure.
Okay. Okay, here's a solid one. We all believe in plate tectonics. Prediction, give me 60 seconds. Cold material near the Earth's core. This was the prediction. So in the early, I believe it was the 1980s, physicist Dr. John Baumgartner, he developed a biblical creation model based on the worldwide flood for the rapid motion of the Earth's crust during the flood. Now, his theory, his model, what it predicted was that cold crust located beneath the pre-flood oceans should have sunk to the floor. Okay, now this crust would have melted if it had millions of years to reach the base of the mantle, sinking as slowly as today's rates. If we look at today's uniformitarian rates, it should have melted. On the other hand, if it sank quickly 4,300 years ago, according to the flood model, as this theory suggested by Dr. Baumgartner, then piles of those plates should still be found at the base of the mantle, cooler than the mantle around them, okay? Guess what? This mantle was discovered after the prediction was made, but it took more than, I think it was 10 years, because they had to develop the technology of seeing something like that at the base of the mantle. So when that technology was developed, the cold material was discovered, just as Baumgartner's model had expected. So
again, none of that even answers what I asked. So you haven't provided anything I've asked for. So
of course, geologists can make predictions based on plate tectonics, just like he's done, based on geology.
All you said is, here's a creationist who made up a model and said he can make predictions. So I can say, here's an astrologer or a homeopath who made up a model and they can make predictions. That's great. I don't care about any of that. What you need to do is show that the scientists, the atheists, the people who don't agree with your model can use the same model to also make predictions. You need an independent source to peer review that same thing isn't just made up nonsense gibberish. It doesn't matter even if you happen to get it correct. That's great.
Been peer reviewed.
Other people have to do it. No,
it's been peer reviewed. It was. Are you trying to say that the creationist John Baumgartner himself came up with the data? This was discovered by seismologists.
Let me clarify. The results were peer reviewed. I grant that. The method was not. That's what needs to be peer reviewed. The method needs to be peer reviewed, even if the results are correct.
Are you saying the method of discovering these cold slabs needs to be peer reviewed?
No. The method of making the prediction needs to be peer reviewed. So we can.
The method of making the prediction was peer reviewed.
No, it wasn't.
Yes, it was. That's the point. Yes, it was. All you're doing is making baseless assertions. Hey, PZ Myers, who has been challenged to a debate by Dr. Nathaniel Jensen, who won't do it because he can't debunk or refute Dr. Nathaniel Jensen's work.
Not relevant.
You're not even getting the arguments he says.
Again, so
you're just saying I'm wrong. That's it.
No. So again, every biologist in the world agrees with me on this. Creationism does not make predictions. Now, the creationists think it makes predictions. They claim it makes predictions. That's great. When you actually look at the method they're using, it's like shaking a magic 8-ball. You get whatever results you want. So the criticism isn't that like you can predict things, and maybe they're right. That's great sometimes. But when you actually try to look at
the method, I win the debate. That's the title of the debate. Thanks a lot.
Standing for truth. You got to let him finish.
Remember, the predictions have to be peer reviewed, or you fail, and they aren't peer reviewable, so you fail.
They've been peer reviewed.
No, they haven't. That's the point.
Yes, they have.
I've already confirmed this many times. Every biologist in the world has confirmed this. They don't make peer-reviewed results. It's just like making shit up. They take a magic 8-ball, they make shit up. Sometimes they get it right, which is totally fine. But the method they're using is just like shaking a magic 8-ball. It's just making shit up. The scientists actually need to verify the methodology that is used to make predictions so that it can be shown to make consistent, correct predictions. And it doesn't work. Every time we look at the creationist methodology, it's bullcrap making shit up. Like Stephen Myers, for example, his model of the information in DNA is complete crap. It's conflating two kinds of math, the Kolmogorov complexity and Shannon complexity, and it's been shown to create a Berry paradox, which just mathematically fails 100% of the time. It can't be used because it fails. And the same thing applies to all the other creationist models. They just fail when you try to actually verify the methodology. Now, can you make lots and lots of predictions? There's tons of creationists, and they're making all kinds of predictions. Are some of them right? Yeah, absolutely. Does that have anything to do with creationism? No, because we can't verify the methodology. It's just like shaking a magic 8-ball and you get some right. Congratulations. You got to go through the peer review process. You have to show the methodology being used can work consistently. And every time it gets put in the peer review process, it fails 100% of the time. That's why no serious biologist anywhere in the world is a creationist.
So you can make assertions all you want. You can say the same things over and over again all you want. They've been through peer-reviewed process. One paper by Dr. Nathaniel Jensen is currently going through peer-reviewed process on a testable prediction in regards to DNA. That's what's inherited. Evolutionists have failed prediction after failed prediction after failed prediction. Our predictions is like me pointing at somebody on the street and saying, you're going to hit a baseball this far. Evolutionist predictions is like looking at somebody and seeing them hit a ball 35 times and then guessing what they're going to hit next. It's not precise. It's not
peer-reviewed process.
Nothing to guess. And that's why they have so many failed predictions.
Give me the paper. You said this has been through the peer-reviewed process. Is it in a biological journal? Is it in a science journal? Is it a nature journal? Is it in one of any of the academically peer-reviewed journals that aren't creationist nonsense journals that have no validity at all? Where is the peer-reviewed journal?
These predictions in regards to, say, the helium found in Earth's rocks, the presence of radio halos in metamorphosed sandstones, cold material that I talked about from Earth's crust near the Earth's core, those are in peer-reviewed journals that aren't creationist journals, but the creationists are the ones making the predictions.
Give me the... Well, yeah, you can be a creationist and make predictions, but you can't use creationism to make predictions. So give me the journal.
Sure, I'll give you the journal. I'll give you all the citations afterwards. And you know what? When that prediction comes true with when it goes through the peer review with Dr. Nathaniel Jensen, you'll be the first one I give it to. Here's another prediction here's another prediction that we can make that anybody can test. We predict based on the creation model that creatures, animals, they will self-adjust to changing environments by the same engineering principles as human design adaptability. Because if we're made in God's image, we can get an idea for the way God created us by the way we create, whether it's modes of transportation, just human designed adaptability mechanisms. And we've actually seen this. Are you familiar with epigenetic markers and the changes that we're seeing based on these epigenetic tags?
Yep, and those have absolutely no corollary to human design at all. Those are purely random natural processes. There's absolutely nothing design related to them.
No, actually it's not, because you can even look at something as simple as diet, which alters our teeth, swimming alters our spleen size, high altitude alters our chromosomes. These changes we're seeing based on our epigenome, they're not random. That's the point. They're non-random adaptive changes that are perfectly consistent with the prediction that I just gave you in regards to animal kinds adjusting to environments based on the same engineering principles as human design adaptability. Look at
right there. That part you said based on human design similar to engineering, that doesn't happen. Human design engineering is based off of an intellectual design of where you think of something and then you put it into action. That doesn't exist in biology anywhere. There is no corollary to biology anywhere to that. There's no similarity to engineering and human design to anything in biology. There's no.
Of course, we can see specific fish that enter cold climates, and all of a sudden they adapt to it right away, way quicker than evolution.
That's not how human design engineering works. That's not.
This is exactly
that has nothing to do with human engineering. You keep saying that. Okay, so we go into an environment and there's a genetic change that is very specified. Okay, that has nothing to do with engineering. Engineering is we think about stuff, we design a change. Biology is changes happen in the genes. There's no thinking.
Right, but we're predicting that we predicted that these changes are based on adaptive mechanisms. Human engineering, for example, look at cars these days. They're engineered with built-in adaptive safety mechanisms that turn on based on the environments around you. And this is exactly what we see in the adaptations observed in animals today. For example, Aaron Ra, he will cite 5 or 6 examples of beneficial mutations. We now know that those so-called beneficial mutations are not even mutations at all. They're based on epigenetics. And these epigenetic markers, they act to control and regulate the activity of our genes, right? So they're influencing our physical appearance in the same way our genes do. But there's no change, Tom, to the underlying genetic code, perfectly consistent with our prediction.
Okay, so you're affirming the consequent. You're saying that there are adaptive mechanisms in genes. Therefore, it's like human adaptive mechanisms. No, humans design things based off biology, not the other way around. So the fact that we have adaptive mechanisms in engineering does not mean it is a feature of human engineering. It means it's a feature of biology that we copy. So you're affirming the consequent. That is not saying they're the same or that they're both from some kind of designer. That's not evidence at all. And we do predict that in evolution. It's purely predicted by evolution all the time. So
that's why evolutionists are always shocked when they discover that a lot of these so-called mutations are actually just based on epigenetic tags. No, they are shocked. You can see how shocked they are. Look at these. Are you saying that they weren't shocked Wait, I don't ask you a question. Are you saying that they weren't shocked when they realized and discovered that these endogenous retroviruses have very, very significant functions?
No, they weren't shocked. That's just something creationist nonsense say. They're saying that it's biology is cool. Yes. Are these predicted by evolution? Yes.
No. They've actually
like,
stated.
oh my God, this can't be explained by evolution. That's not a thing. That is not a thing in biology.
Of course they're going to have. No, these endogenous retroviruses, they've always stated, should be non-functional evolutionary leftovers. They're based on retroviral infections in history. Now we know that they have crucial functions that help. Let me finish my sentence, please, because then I lose my train of thought when you're interrupting the whole time. They help regulate genes and even determine cell types. Now, evolutionists, yes, they've had post hoc, ad hoc rescue devices. For example, they'll say, oh no, these endogenous retroviruses have been co-opted, but that's just uninformative gloss. It's post hoc, ad hoc.
No, that's wrong. Again, that was already predicted. That was already
just
predicted.
To be sure that Standing for Truth had a chance to finish that thought. You good?
Yeah, no, I'm just saying that these endogenous retroviruses, they act to distribute regulatory information. They confer genes with new patterns of expression and function. They're important in the placenta, the embryo. Evolution has never predicted this. That's why they've had a rescue device of co-option. That's not true.
Again, so none of the technical data helps you. None of the technical data helps you. The more stuff you say about technical data, just all stuff that proves you wrong. So just like people said, oh no, the gene had, like, what was it, the ENCODE project, which said that there's no function. Oh, evolution predicted there would be no function, but there's function. It's the exact same kind of nonsense. No,
it's not nonsense because, okay, I want to ask you Tom, I want to ask you a specific question so we can have a head-to-head prediction and a head-to-head testing of our models. How much of our genome, the entire genome, non-coding and protein coding, whether it's function and expression, whether it's function in the embryo, how much on a percentage-wise do you think or predict is functional?
Why are you asking me? Asking a biologist.
I have asked a biologist. I have asked many biologists and scientists, and they all say it has to be under 20%, non-coding and coding. We've predicted, based on the created heterozygosity hypothesis, that the majority, over 85% of our genome, non-coding and coding, has some type of function and purpose. I understand evolutionists have said there's some function in the non-coding regions, some, but no more than 20%. That is literally, we can do a head-to-head comparison of these models. Over 80%, less than 20%. Those are total opposite predictions, Tom.
Yes. Yep, they are. And the evolutionists were correct. The creationism was wrong.
No, the evolutionists have been wrong. They're wrong more and more every single day. Endogenous retroviruses.
This is why you don't understand, because you're conflating different definitions of function. Nope. So, again, you're proven wrong. Proven wrong again because you're conflating different definitions of function. This is why.
No, I'm not conflating. There's non-coding DNA, and then there's protein coding. Yes, the evolutionist has said that there might be some function in the non-coding DNA.
This debate has been answered. This debate is over.
The vast majority.
Standing. All of the technical data proves you wrong. All of the technical stuff has been answered by biologists over and over and over again. The ones that make predictions are the evolutionists. If you want to make a prediction about all the technical stuff, go bother P.Z. Myers and go publish papers. I don't need to do that because it's already been done. So my point is that none of the creationist models can be peer-reviewed. You can't find a consistent system in any kind of creationist model that can be used to make new predictions. It's just like shaking a magic eight ball.
Tom, I don't want you to slap around. This is why you never answer my question. Our last debate was 6 months ago, and you still don't have an answer to how much of our genome, non-coding and protein coding combined, is functional. You always say, oh, the evolutionists never said that all the non-coding.
I'm a biologist.
I've never said that.
I don't even care.
Biologists say less than 20% is functional. And they are wrong because we have biochemical evidence that over 80% of it is functional. But that's biochemical.
No, the ENCODE project was proven false. The ENCODE project was proven false. All of those were proven false. There's a reason evolutionists reject that. No.
How many gene knockout experiments have been performed on humans and mammals?
Again, any technical data.
It's premature to say that the majority of our genome is non-functional.
None of the technical data helps you at all. None of
course. Are you kidding me? Of course it is. All of this data that's coming out is in technical journals. And even evolutionists are admitting, oh, wow, our genome is a lot more functional than we've ever thought.
Creationism. So again, you want to take up those things, go write a creationist model that can be used to make peer-reviewed predictions, put it through the peer review process, demonstrate it can, that's evidence. Until you can do that, you got nothing.
No. We've already made the prediction that God is not going to produce Adam and Eve adults without any pre-existing DNA differences. Therefore, we've made a prediction that the vast majority of our genome is functional, and this is exactly what we are seeing more and more every day.
Nothing. You've got nothing. Again, none of that has ever gotten to the.
All you have, Tom, is assertions. You won't even answer my question on how much of the genome is functional, because you know if you give the wrong answer.
Not a biologist. Again, I'm not a biologist, so stop asking me about technical biology questions. Go ask a biologist.
What we will do
is... You want to know a specific prediction, though, and I'm trying to give you a specific prediction.
I don't want a prediction. I want peer-reviewed prediction. I want an atheist to read the creationist model and to make a prediction.
No, you know what? I just want prediction. At this point, I've given you retrodictions, postdictions,
not evidence,
testable predictions, future testable predictions that have been confirmed. You have an impossible criteria because you are holding to your basic worldview.
No, this is not in any way. No,
uniformitarianism. Yes, this is a
fact.
You
do this all the time in science. Every single peer-reviewed paper can be done. Can this happen in science? You read the model, you look at the consequences.
Oh, you there, Tom?
Got a little bit of
I know what I think.
I think we maybe lost Tom. Let me check. We got him back. All right. Go ahead, Tom.
So again, none of the creationist models have ever been able to do just what everything else in science can do. You say it's an impossible standard. It's not an impossible standard. It's the most easy standard to meet ever, because
everything your standard's already been met, but then you keep just asserting that what I'm saying is wrong, which you just admitted that you don't understand it because you're not a biologist. We've made specific predictions, mutation rates, speciation rate, DNA function.
You just said it met the standard. If it's met the standard, show me an atheist who can read the creationist paper and make a prediction. Show me the peer-reviewed paper where atheists have said, yes, this model can be used to make predictions.
Okay, so an atheist with a biased worldview, you got P.Z. Myers, Herman Mays, who won't even discuss these predictions with Dr. Nathaniel Jensen. He's invited any of them to do so, but yet you want them to look it over, but they won't. They refuse to because of their basic assumptions.
1 sec. We're going to, Tom, if you want to finish that thought, I'll let you finish that thought, Tom, and then we're going to go to the closing statements. As long as, if you can do it, do me a favor and let it be a quick one, please.
So it doesn't have to be an atheist. If you can do it, a Hindu can do it. If a Hindu can do it, if a Buddhist can do it, if a Jainist can do it, if anybody who isn't a creationist can look at the creationist model, say, yes, this can be used to make predictions, that counts. The reason I'm using an atheist is just as an example. It doesn't need to be an atheist. And yes, P.Z. Myers and all the guys have looked at the models and they've shown their faults. So again, just show me people who aren't creationists who can look at creationist models and make predictions. It's never happened. That's the problem.
Gotcha. We will now move into the closing statements. So this will be 5 minutes from each speaker. My assumption is Tom started, so we'll have Tom go through the first closing statement. It'll be 5 minutes, followed by Standing for Truth statement, which will be 5 minutes, followed by the Q&A. So setting the timer. Thanks for your patience.
Yeah, so my entire statement is just, can creationism, like anything in science, you can just give it to anybody in the world, they can all test it, they all get the same results. Doesn't matter. Pick a paper. You do it. Doesn't matter if you're a Jain. Doesn't matter if you're a Hindu. Doesn't matter if you're a Muslim. You take the paper. You do the method. You get the same result. Creationism can't do this. The only people who can get results from creationist models are creationists. When you give it to anybody else in the world and they try to make sense of it, it's just gibberish, like shaking an 8-ball and saying, I get made up results. That's it. That's my problem with creationism. The reason it doesn't have evidence is because no one else can use it except the creationists. It's kind of like Jonathan Smith. Only the Mormons can read the golden plates. They're not really very good. They're not evidence. You got to have something that other people, peer review, can use that aren't of your same ideology. That's the part that creationism fails 100% of the time, everywhere.
Was that your 5-minute statement?
Yep.
Okay, you got it. So Standing for Truth, resetting the clock, and the floor is yours.
Okay, so as I've said, numerous predictions that are both novel, predictions that have been confirmed, retrodictions. I can go on and on about retrodictions in regard to mitochondrial Eve, Y chromosome Adam, the low genetic diversity that we actually observe, which points us right back to Adam and Eve, which the evolutionists can't explain. Low genetic diversity, that doesn't make any sense according to their model, which is why that they've resorted to post hoc, ad hoc explanations, rescue devices of a population bottleneck. But then this population bottleneck would have been genetically compromised. So evolution, that type of ape to man evolution only happens in the imagination of those that want to believe in it. I've given numerous predictions that have been confirmed. The rapid reversal of Earth's magnetic field, I didn't even get into based on the flood model. The cold material from Earth's crust near the Earth's core, that's been confirmed. The presence of radio halos, helium in Earth's rocks, the strength of several planets, magnetic systems. That was confirmed based on the Voyager 2 measurements. For example, the numbers that I was trying to talk about, Dr. Russell Humphrey's prediction that he made, the numbers that resulted not only matched the strength of the known magnetic fields at the time, but also successfully anticipated Voyager 2's measurement of the magnetic field of Uranus. I think this was in 1986, and Neptune. So these results, everything that I've talked about in the fields of genetics, in the fields of biology, astronomy, they confirm the biblical-based model. And that specific one also helped confirm that the solar system is really young, as the Bible claims. Now, Dr. Nathaniel Jensen, who's made these specific predictions, the debate title is, do creationists make testable predictions? Well, maybe TJump should have made the title a little bit more of a mouthful because of all his criteria, but I have met the standard of the debate. I have made numerous testable predictions that you can go look at yourself. And I've got so many more as well. When this peer-reviewed paper comes out regarding the history of civilization found in our DNA, then TJump is going to have to admit, yes, this was confirmed and totally meets his standard. For example, DNA function, which he won't give us an actual number for, because he knows that based on biochemical evidence, based on accumulating papers that suggest that the vast majority of our genome is functional, once again, he's going to shoot himself in the foot, because that's a total opposite prediction that evolutionists and uniformitarians would make. But evolutionists can't make any real testable predictions. They made a few predictions based on bones found in the dirt, for example. Tom will point to some transitional fossils that may have been found. But at the end of the day, these types of predictions, they are literally like me looking at somebody hit a baseball 50 times and then predicting the average or the next hit that they're going to make. These are not precise and specific like our predictions. For example, these transitional fossils, I mean, I can easily arrange a bicycle and then a tricycle and a four-wheeler. We've got 2 wheels, 3 wheels, and 4 wheels. Well, at the end of the day, I can then put a 2-wheeled bicycle and a four-wheeler and predict there must be a 3-wheeler somewhere out there. Lo and behold, there's a bicycle that meets that prediction. These are not specific. These are not predictable, okay? The predictions we're making based on genetics, genes, that's what's inherited. These are precise and these are specific. And at the end of the day, the title of the debate, do creationists make testable predictions? Well, the answer is yes. I've given many. I've given ones that have been confirmed, ones that will be confirmed that are through the peer review process. I win the debate. I understand Tom has to deny the evidence. He has to ignore the evidence. He can't answer straightforward questions about DNA function.
1 minute left.
Because then he's going to admit at the end of the day that he lost the debate. So we can do a head-to-head comparison of our models based on DNA function, but these evolutionists, like P.Z. Myers, for example, he's been invited by Dr. Nathaniel Jensen. Richard Dawkins has been invited. Dr. Stephan Fellow has taken it up in written form. Go read it. Herman Mesa has taken it up. There's been a written rebuttal to that as well. Go read it. Nobody has debunked what he said. Predictions are coming true. They continue to come true. So it was actually a fun back and forth, fun debate. Let's go on to the Q&A. Thanks for doing it, Tom. Thanks for setting it up, James.
You bet. Thank you very much. And we will now read off the super chats. So thanks so much for your questions, everybody. And it was a wild one. So it was a spirited one, which we appreciate. And with that, Roy Lindsay, thanks for your super chat. They said, standing for truth's interpretation of the evidence is simply false. How do you like them apples standing for truth?
I'll be crying myself to sleep over that super chat.
Next,
you'll have to prove that they're false. Oh, go ahead, James.
Vibrant Brantley, thanks for your super chat. He says, it could have been my audio. He says, is he using a dolphin call as a microphone possibly? Haha, very funny. But it does remind me, I want to say thanks so much for everybody. When you remember when we had those audio problems? I just look back and I'm like, I'm thankful for you guys. Thanks for sticking with us. Roy Lindsay, thanks for your super chat. They said, Standing for Truth, why does the PhD biochemist Cy Gart in the chat say genetics is testable or has testable predictions which prove evolution? Are you able to comprehend facts?
Well, I've already gone over their so-called predictions based on fossils in my closing. So their predictions are weak. They're actually not predictable. They're just guesses that once in a while come true. Everything in regards to junk DNA has been overturned. Their chromosome 2 fusion, endogenous retroviruses, pseudogenes, genetic markers, whether you look at the gulo pseudogene. These are all their so-called best evidence, DNA level nested hierarchies. They've all been overturned. All failed predictions. We are the ones making predictions in genetics. Dr. Cy Gart, who I believe works for BioLogos, has admitted that Dr. Vanima, who debated Dr. Jensen for 4 hours, lost. And Dr. Cy Gart, maybe he should take up Dr. Nathaniel Jensen's offer and talk about these predictions. Because I will say, in regards to testable predictions, creationists are winning big time.
Next up, thanks. Let's see. Thanks for your super chat, Jay Shy. They said, can Standing for Truth make a phylogenetic tree based off DNA sequences that shows or predicts we will find separate created kinds unrelated to all the others?
Very, very good question. So nested hierarchies, DNA level hierarchies, whether it's in nuclear DNA, whether it's in mitochondrial DNA, creation predicts the exact same thing. Therefore, we need to go to a testable prediction that can differentiate between the two models. And Dr. Nathaniel Jensen has made predictions. He's given a testable model on how we can use genome sequencing, phylogenetic systematic methodologies to find out what is related and what's not related. I've actually got his specific predictions here. For sake of time, I'm not going to read them, but I will post them in the one of his technical papers in regards to it. Has to do with the function of DNA differences. It's like 52 pages, extremely technical. I'll post it after the debate if people are actually interested in discovering how we can see what's related and what's not.
Gotcha. One quick thing, just because Cy has been on before, and he just wanted people to know. He said, I actually don't work for BioLogos, so just wanted to get that out. And Steven Steen, thanks for your super chat. Oh, wait, we're jumping the gun. Sorry about that. Brian Stevens says, right now, Standing for Truth has 0 goose egg peer-reviewed citations. Thanks for your super chat, Brian Stevens. Standing for Truth. Thoughts?
Actually, I do have a ton of peer-reviewed citations here. I can easily post them afterwards. For sake of dead air, I don't just, take 20, 30 seconds to post every single 52-page technical paper for people to read. This one from Dr. Nathaniel Jensen that deals with mitochondrial DNA function, nuclear DNA function, that can help us distinguish between what's related and what's not. I'll post that. Brian Stevens can go read it. I'm sure he's not going to understand much of it, but if he does, set up a debate with Dr. Jensen and talk about these predictions, because nobody else is. PZ Myers isn't.
Gotcha. Next up, thanks for your patience as we get to the next one. Crackerjack12 says, Standing for Truth already won this debate. Call it off, James. Oh, they're coming at you, Tom. Tom, you want to make a response?
I gave my criterion for what counts as predictions in the beginning. If it doesn't meet all of those, then it's not a prediction. Simple as that. Like, the point of predictions, as I stated, was to differentiate between what's imaginary and what's real. And if you can't meet all of those criteria, it doesn't do that. Like, the point of me going through the whole explanation of saying I can predict the sun will come up tomorrow is that anyone can predict it, which means it doesn't show your explanation isn't imaginary, which is why you need some criteria that other people who don't agree with your delusions can actually use to verify. So everything in science, you can just give it to anyone in the world, even creationists, and they can confirm it. They can use the same methodology to come to the same conclusions every time, no matter what. Creationism, no one but creationism can use creationist models to make predictions. It's like a magic language that only creationists can read, apparently. Just like kicking a magic 8-ball, somehow they get consistent results, but no one else does. Wonder why.
Gotcha. Let's see. Speed of Sound, thanks for your super chat. They said, question for Beta, Standing for Truth. I made up the beta part. He didn't really say that. Sorry. Okay. So just stirring the pot. Okay. He said,
you make it fun, James. You make it fun.
He said, if there are no beneficial mutations, then how did endogenous retroviruses end up mutating to have a function?
That question's for me?
Yes.
That's what I would like to know. So a lot of these, whether it's the ALUs, these transposons, the endogenous retroviruses, now that we know that, let's say the transposable elements, for example, they're a very important source of tightly regulated, biochemically active, non-coding elements. And these are extremely important for numerous reasons. I can go on and on and on, but the evolutionists have to say that they were mutated and then co-opted to have these functions, just like these pseudogenes, which we now know are not actually genetic mistakes that are inherited from our so-called common ape ancestor. They're actually DNA elements that are important to sustain healthy life processes. They have to say those were co-opted as well. It's all post hoc, ad hoc reasoning. So these DNA elements, like endogenous retroviruses, they're evidence for design. God obviously put them there for various reasons, and because of the fall in genetic entropy, there has been disease, say, associated with some of these, but yeah, no evidence for evolution.
Gotcha. Thanks so much. Next up, movie theory coming at you, Tom. They're talking some smack. They said James put Tom out of his misery, has getting crushed. I think so. I think they meant he's getting crushed. Tom, thoughts?
Can you hear me right now?
Yes.
Okay. What did he say?
So James put Tom out of his.
Did he make an argument at any point? He was just saying.
No argument. I think they're trying to troll you, Tom.
Yeah, so essentially Standing provided absolutely nothing that can be confirmed by other people. It's like if you say you have a made-up language that is somehow coherent, but no one can actually read it except you, it's probably not coherent. That's creationism.
Gotcha. Thank you very much. Steven Steen, thanks for your super chat. He said, James is my rescue device. I don't know what that means, but thanks, Steven. It's off-putting every time. Sigifredo Sarabia, thanks for your super chat. He said, TomJump, you use, quote, induction, claiming evidence today to prove human evolution. If we can't observe this evidence, does it mean we are evolving right now? If not, how do we make the connection? If so, what will we become?
Yes, I'm using induction. Yes, we can observe it right now. Yes, we are evolving right now. We can confirm that with testable predictions that can be confirmed by anyone, because anyone can use the model to make predictions that will get positive results anywhere in the world consistently, unlike creationism. Does that answer your question? I hope.
So Sigifredo always likes to keep us on our toes. I think that might have.
James, can I give just literally a 15-second response? I promise.
Short and snippy.
Short and snippy. I want to just say, because he mentioned human evolution and Tom says that we're still evolving. We've always predicted that humans and apes are not related, and they've recently discovered fossil footprints that are identical to human footprints. They've been found, and guess what? They're dated to be 5.7 million years old, and that means that they were found in older layers than Lucy, our so-called ancestor long ago and far away. So at the end of the day, evolutionists are scrambling to find an explanation for this one. Looks like human evolution's false.
I think I remember those human footprints with those dinosaurs. Yep.
No,
sure.
not those. No. That's
I know it's a joke. It's the same.
I get you, Tom.
Gotcha.
Tricky.
Yeah. Truth or Gart. Sorry about that. That's a weird Freudian slip. Maybe
Truth.
Truth. I think I was a combination of standing for truth and Psy. It's for standing for truth. He says, do you follow the ICR model of environmental change? And in parentheses, he puts, as you mentioned, with epigenetics. And he said, or the AIG model that doesn't agree with this.
Right. So I would say that the model that I was putting forth regarding to adaptive change, we can see that a lot of change is non-random. For example, the epigenetic related changes that we see. But I do agree that natural selection and mutations can also lead to change. Some of it may be random. I think he might be talking about, I think there is a specific scientist that says all changes are non-random, but predictions have been made on that. We'll see if they come true, but we are finding out that a lot of these changes are really non-random. It's like they were pre-programmed to adapt based on the surrounding environment. So I would say my position is a combination of both. Not strictly non-random changes. I think there are some random changes as well.
Gotcha. Thanks so much. And Jay Shai, thanks for your super chat. They said, standing for truth, if majority of the genomes are functional, then how do you explain the huge huge genome in amoebas compared to ours. We are clearly more complex.
Right. So genome size doesn't necessarily correlate to the information, like especially with amoebas. I mean, gene duplications do occur, which can actually like duplicate almost entire genomes. And but at the end of the day, the predictions that we're making, especially in regards to the human functionality or on mammals and animals and such, we're talking about predictions in the embryo, in human development. But amoebas, onions, these types of I guess plants, animal species, they don't have brains. They don't have a lot of the organ systems that humans and other mammals will have. So their genome systems, I would imagine, would be based on totally different DNA function related predictions. But good question. Good question. There are some anomalies there for sure.
Gotcha. Thanks so much. Next up, Henrik Simonson. Thanks for your super chat. They said, when will creationism benefit biology or science in any useful way? Standing for truth, what have you got to say?
Creation science based on the design model. I mean, we talked about epigenetics earlier and how these epigenetic markers are now known to act and control. What they do is they regulate the activity of our genes, right? It's our epigenome. And what our epigenome is doing, it's influencing our physical appearance in much the same way as our genes do. But what's nice is that there's no change to the underlying genetic code. So the more we study our genetic information system with a design model related mindset, we can see just how functional our genetic information systems are. And that directly comes from the thought process of intelligent design and biblical creations, because evolutionists do believe that the majority of the genome is junk. Over 20%, 80% of it is junk according to them. So they're not expecting that type of genome-wide functionality, but we are, and that advances science, James.
Gotcha. Next up, thanks for your super chat from Sigifredo Sarabia again. He strikes again, this time it's Standing for Truth. He's taking a swing at you. He says, why do we have stacked earth layers and regions like sand dunes or lakes in comparison to everywhere else from a single flood? Why is it now a mush?
Can you repeat that question? What's the anomaly he's having?
I don't know what a mush is, but I do think the first part is they're asking, like, if there's this flood that happened, like it's the same flood in the sense that if it's global, it's like the flood happened everywhere at the same time, right? Like, in at least broadly speaking. So they say, why do we have, if that's the case, why do we have stacked earth layers in regions like sand dunes or lakes in comparison to everywhere else? So I think they're saying, like, why is it that some parts of the earth have stacked earth layers in regions like sand dunes or lakes, but others don't?
Right. So, I mean, we do see worldwide sedimentary strata deposition. We do see these pancake layered rock strata. Then the things he's talking about, I mean, if it is worldwide, depending on what the earth was that way, the pre-flood earth, I mean, there's going to be different parts of the earth that are covered in different levels of water and different types of disasters going on. I mean, I'd have to look exactly at the situation he's talking about, but I can direct him to like Dr. Andrew Snelling, for example, or Dr. Steve Austin, where they actually work oftentimes in the field and look at specific, I guess, situations like that. But yeah, if it's a worldwide flood, I mean, there's going to be different observations worldwide. Everything's not just going to be the same, but definitely the rule is, right, the majority does oftentimes prove the rule, is that we do see this worldwide strata deposition, and the rock stratas themselves do point to a global flood. But some of those specifics, yeah, I think I'd have to just point him to some of the creation geologists and their technical work. But good question. Thanks, James.
Gotcha. Dora and Nuku, forgive me if I mispronounce it, let me know. Thanks for your super chat. They said, next debate should be young earth creationism versus old earth creationism with totally different creationists. That would be a fun topic. I don't think we've done that topic in a long time. By the way, something like it might happen. There's like a small possibility. I mean, we got to see if they'd be willing for it, but there might be a big debate, something like that coming soon. And I'm kind of
That'd be fun.
Stay tuned.
That'd be fun.
And Steven Steen, thanks for your super chat. I don't know exactly what this word means. I don't know what the cool slang is. He says, standing for truth, proved creationism can make incorrect, testable predictions, and met his, what's a BOP? Is that some sort of
burden of proof, I believe.
Oh, I looked it up on Urban Dictionary, and that's not what I read. So, therefore, I thought it was way worse.
Something naughty attached to it too.
Yeah,
I'm not too sure.
Everything on Urban Dictionary, any definition you put into Urban Dictionary, you'll find that there's some way in which that word is used as some sort of like sexual maneuver. Okay, Steve, so he says, therefore, won the debate. Sorry, Tom. Sorry, standing for truth. What do you both think about that? Looks like Steven he's throwing his poop at both of you. You guys got responses? He said,
can you read the whole thing again?
Standing for truth, proved creationism can make incorrect, testable predictions and thus met his burden of proof. Therefore, he won the debate. Sorry, Tom. Sorry, standing for truth.
So Steven is being pedantic like Steve McRae, and he doesn't actually use logic in the way he forms words. So when we're saying, does it make predictions? If it can make false predictions, well, then that's kind of pointless. Anybody can obviously make false predictions. So in normal conversation, we usually infer there's some kind of meaning there, indicative of truth. So unlike Steve, who has his head up his ass, you have to actually infer reason and logic and common sense into the meaning of those words.
Okay, you bet.
I would say, yeah, it seems like most people, at least viewing, probably atheists as well, can see that the burden of proof has been met. The title of the debate is, do creationists make testable predictions? I think Tom realized that, oh no, yes, we do, and a variety of things, future testable predictions. So everything Tom says is 100% false. I have met the burden of proof here. Creation scientists do meet the gold standard of science. We're actually the ones making the specific predictions. But for debate's sake, obviously Tom needs to, put forth the arguments and be aggressive at times to make it fun. But definitely met the burden of proof for sure.
Gotcha.
So no, Standing never met the burden of proof there. Again, you have to make them, the other people have to be able to verify them. As I proved, if you're the only one who can read the magic scrolls to make the predictions and no one else can, that isn't evidence. So it doesn't.
Everybody else can.
This is the golden standard, and every scientist everywhere in the world has already said, nope, creationism can't do this. So you got to find an atheist, find a Hindu, find somebody somewhere in the world, some scientist who isn't a creationist, and show me that they can do this. Show me. Tell me. Find me an example.
You can say those same sentences over and over and over again, but it doesn't take away the fact that I have met the burden of proof, and I've given you many testable predictions.
You got to give me an example.
That's the fact.
You got to give.
1 second.
You have to give me an example.
So sorry, you guys. Someone summoned Steve McRae.
I enjoyed it though.
You had to say his name. So I bet Steve McRae is gonna pop into the live chat and start talking smack. Oh man. We hope you're doing well, Steve. Tom loves you. It's like a love-hate relationship. It's very complex. I mean, but they really do love each other. It's like a father-son thing, you know. It's a twisted one, but. We definitely are. We're gonna move to the next super chat. What was it that I saw that just made me laugh? There's a super chat that I have to. We're gonna come back to Jay Shai. I promise we got that one from you, but I have to say it because while I can remember it, Garfield Lasagna. Thanks for your super chat. By the way, huge Garfield fan. Said, "Hey, standing for truth. I reported you to the ADL because your avatar is blackface." I think they're joking. Don't worry. Because your avatar is technically I guess blackface. But the point is,
what does that mean exactly?
Well, because blackface is usually when a white person paints their face black, and your superhero person clearly has a literal black face. So it made me think of something though, that namely, I doubt they really reported you, but it made me think of, we just got reported. I won't say the name because I'm not trying to put the person down, but I mean, if there's a reason to report us. But if you want, if you're like, man, James just kids is just like, he's like standing for truth. I see him get angry. Is that if you are pissed at the channel, pardon my French, that's if you're angry at modern day debate, if you're like, oh James, because we had that debate a week or two ago with Jill and Vosh, which was a fiery one, and it was on whether or not Trump is racist. And someone reported us. They said, hey, you just platformed a neo-Nazi. I don't know if Jill's a neo-Nazi. Frankly, I doubt it. I don't agree with what Jill says. But nonetheless, I'm like, I don't know if Jill's really a Nazi. But the point is, if you're like, oh, man, James, you make me so mad. If you want to debate on modern day debate, whether or not I'm, platforming the wrong people or something, I'm open to that. So I would rather you just... if you want to come on and debate and say, James, like, I want to make the case that you're doing harm to society because you platform these people, I'm totally open to that. I'm willing to debate that myself. Tom, did we just lose you? Where'd you go? Tom, you're standing really still. Oh, okay, I think you're back. So the point is this. I'm open to defending via debate, modern day debate, when we do controversial stuff. It'd probably have to be winter break because it's like really busy now, but just want to let you know that. Speaking of the idea of reporting people, with that, thanks so much for your super chat, Jay Shy, coming at you. They said, how does Standing for Truth explain de novo gene birth? Hopefully I pronounced that right. Is it de novo?
De novo gene synthesis. See, once again, that for the most part is ad hoc, post hoc, because from my understanding, I guess I would possibly need him to be in here to clarify himself, but there's something called orphan genes, and these orphan genes, once again, are a fulfilled prediction based on the creation model that talks about created kinds, because these orphan genes, they're fully functional gene sequences that code for both a functional messenger RNA and a protein, but they lack similar counterparts in other organisms. So there's orphan genes specific to humans, orphan genes specific to, say, some of the apes. So that's actually evidence against common ancestry with humans and apes. So they have to look to de novo gene synthesis to explain some of these orphan genes. But it's circular because they see orphan genes exist. Therefore, they have to have an explanation. De novo gene synthesis. And de novo gene synthesis exists because there's orphan genes. So it's just circular. There's no real empirical, testable, and verifiable evidence for it. It's just all post hoc, ad hoc, as TJump likes to talk about.
Thank you very much. We next up, Patreon priority question. Basically, if you hadn't heard, we do have a Patreon, and if you basically there's like different tiers. One of them, you get to ask, if you ask a question, it goes to the very top of the list. And Patreon, or I should say, like of standard questions. Brian Stevens, thanks for your question. He said, for Standing for Truth, your views on genome sequencing and bioinformatics work of your views on the work of Professor Eric Lander of the Broad Institute and MIT regarding genome sequencing and bioinformatics, which demonstrates common ancestry. Forgive me, let me read that one more time. Sorry, I think I screwed that up.
Is that a statement or a question?
Question. They said it's a statement. It's kind of half, so half and half. They say Standing for Truth's views on genome sequencing and bioinformatics work of Professor Eric Lander of the Broad Institute and MIT, which demonstrates common ancestry. Okay, so I think he's saying like your views are like borrowing from a person whose model demonstrates common ancestry. I think they're saying that.
Well, I mean, yeah, they can use genome sequencing. That's how they build these phylogenetic charts that they'll look to nested hierarchies on a genomic level, whether they're looking at the endogenous retroviruses or specific genetic markers. They can look at SNP, and they're comparing all the different organisms and building their trees. But as I've stated, the genome sequencing, when utilized, actually demonstrates common design. I mean, you can look at the Hox genes. You can look at so much in the genome that suggests limited ancestry versus universal common ancestry. But for the most part, DNA level nested hierarchies, say whether in mitochondrial DNA or nuclear DNA, it's agnostic to the debate because both evolution and creations for the most part can explain it. That's why we need to look at predictions and data that differentiate between the models. And that's where, you know, specific predictions on DNA function come into play. Most debates that I have, the debaters don't want to discuss in detail DNA function, but DNA function really is what can distinguish between the models in regards to genome sequencing. So, I mean, his statement or question, whatever it was good, because that is key. It's 100% how we decide. So thanks, James.
Gotcha. Next, thanks for your question. I wanted to push this to the top because I was wondering, do people have interest in this? Josiah Johnson asked, is there an MDD Modern Day Debate Discord or any community outside of live chats? So we are on Facebook, on Twitter. Not a ton of conversation goes on there, to be honest. Most of it goes on in the live chat and the comments. However, if people would be like, oh man, if you actually had a Discord, I would totally enjoy it. Then I'm like, sure, like I've thought about having one, but I don't know enough about it, and I just feel like a rookie. So I was like, should I do it? Like, I don't know if people would do it, but if people would like a Discord for Modern Day Debate, I'm totally open to it. Just wanted to, it's good for me to get your feedback on like what would be a good use of time. So thanks so much. Next up, I'm going to try to get through just a couple quick questions. Sorry guys, if you guys are okay with it. We've got several more, but God of Spaghetti, thanks for your question. They said, for Standing for Truth, could you list a few of your sources?
Sure, I can. Let me see here. I got all my sources here. What does he want me to do? Does he want me to post the links? I mean, I've got sources from peer-reviewed technical journals, obviously creation related, as well as you know, articles, especially on endogenous retroviruses that I talked about. What else did I talk about? DNA function, epigenetics. These are all papers that are not, you know, from creation peer-reviewed journals, whether it's from Nature. So, I mean, I can post the links if that's what he wants. Maybe I'll just post the links after the debate in the comment section. There's a ton of them.
Gotcha. Next up, I'm gonna try to just read through maybe like one or two more. Sorry guys that we're not getting through all the questions. I'm trying to just going through the top ones here. Emotionally Sent an Emoticon, thanks for your question. They said, let's see, I'm gonna try to actually look for some that might be for Tom too. They just, yeah, I want to push this up. Crackerjack 12 says, Tom, do you realize the topic of the debate is not, quote, can atheists use creationist models to predict? It's, can anyone use creationism to make predictions?
No, it's can anyone who isn't a creationist use creationism to make predictions? And the answer is no. Just nonsense.
The answer is yes, not nonsense.
Next,
give me an example. You still provided no evidence of that. So
TJump's arguments the entire debate are just assertions. When I ask him to provide specifics, like, hey, what arguments does P.Z. Myers use? He says, I don't know. Like, imagine I came to a
relevant to debate. You keep talking about things that aren't relevant to debate.
Dr. Tompkins said you're wrong about the chromosome 2 fusion, and someone asked me, well, what does
not relevant to debate? Not relevant to debate.
I said, I don't know. Go look at it. It's not a good way of debating, Tom. Even the atheists.
That's not part of the debate. Not part of the debate.
Not understanding the predictions is not my problem. It's actually yours, unfortunately.
That's not part of the debate. Again, give me an example of someone who isn't a creationist who can use creationist models to make predictions. You can't.
I've given you many. You not understanding the model is not my problem. It's yours. I'm sorry.
You're the non-creationists who use creationist models.
You're in scientific denial, Tom. I can help you with that.
I'm going to let Tom have the last word on this because the question was for Tom.
Okay, Tom, you can have the last word.
So again, the evidence is if you want to show creationism isn't just made up bullcrap, you have to show that other people who aren't creationists can use the same model to make predictions. Every time I've asked for an example of this, he's given me nothing. He said, here's a creationist who made a creationist prediction. That's great. That's not evidence. Give me a non-creationist who can use creationist models to make predictions. That's all I want. That's the peer review. That's what it means to be peer reviewed. You can't do that. It's just gibberish nonsense.
Gotcha. We will take one last question. And based on the live chat, a couple people said like, hey, I would enjoy a Discord. So I'm going to try to get a Discord up in the next week. And then if you guys would enjoy it, please come hang out. So with that, I think we read that one. Emotionally Sent Emoticon, I think I was about to read yours. They said, stand for truth, so you love genetics. Can you predict if Haldane's dilemma would not be problematic if applied to variation within quote-unquote kinds using a 6,000-year time scale?
Well, Haldane's dilemma has to do with the limits of evolutionary change in regards to beneficial mutations and the speed of beneficial mutations. So when used on humans, in regards to human ape ancestry, it actually demonstrates that the speed at which these beneficial mutations would happen makes it impossible. But his specific predictions that he's asking about in regards to other animal species, I don't think that those predictions have been made or that information and data has been looked at. But I'll look into it. But what's important is that it has been looked at in humans and in apes in regards to their ancestry, and it demonstrates that it's impossible. And the evolutionists can still choose to believe in it, but it's not empirical science. It's imagination. It requires imagination to believe what is contradictory to empirical science.
Gotcha. We want to say thanks so much, everybody, for being here. It's been a blast. I have I love reading through the live chats, trying to keep up with it. It's been a lively one today, and want to say especially thanks to our speakers, who I really appreciate you guys being here. It's always a pleasure to have you guys on. You guys are fervent, passionate fellows. And yeah, so thanks so much for being here. Their links are in the description. So if you are like, I like that, I want to hear more, or maybe you're like, sitting for truth, I just want to go to his page and just rip him. Well, his link is in the description.
Well, there's many that do.
So want to say thanks for being here, and keep sifting out the reasonable from the unreasonable. And as mentioned, if you want a reminder, hit that little notification bell for the Destiny versus Praise debate on whether or not Trump is racist on Monday, November 11th. It's going to be, I think, a very wild one. So thanks for being here, everybody. Take care.